Everybody pretend I'm jumping over something really cool. Stat, okay? Here we go. This is the intro to this video. Welcome to the cold open. Ready? Okay. Ah! Please go to another clip now. Welcome to the recap of one of the books that is guilty of putting me into a 7-year-long reading slump. That's right, this book made me hate reading, and I decided to try it out again because maybe little me didn't know what she was talking about, but fun fact, I think she did. But I made this video for y'all still, so you don't have to go through reading these books. I mean, you could just watch the movie, but what's the fun in that when I could just tell you what actually happens in the book and you could have cool book lore instead of just movie lore, like, right? Look, this is the first time in a long time we're getting through 2 books in one video, so I'm just gonna go ahead and send you over to recap, Natalie, so we're not here for 4.5 hours. Also, if you're watching this in the future and the Patriots win the Super Bowl, I told you so, and if they lose, I'm gonna be like, yeah, it's okay. That's fine. We just got a bunch of newbies on the team, so we'll be back. We are picking up right where we left off with our little crew that's heading to Amity right now. So we've got Tris, Caleb, Tobias, and Marcus all in a little train car on the way to go see the nice peaceful friends of the rest of the factions. They all make it there safely. It's the beginning of the book. We're not killing anybody yet. And Johanna, the leader there, is like, yo, you can stay for the night, but we need to talk to the rest of the faction before I can actually tell you you're allowed to stay here for longer than that. Because the Amity faction makes decisions all together as one big happy family. There's nobody that's really above anybody else or has more power than anybody else in this faction. Now, luckily for our little crew, the next day it's decided by the entire faction that Amity will be an unbiased safe house for any faction member that feels like they need safety to come to. But there will be no weapons allowed, and if any conflict arises, whether that's verbal or physical, both parties involved will be asked to leave. I should be like, no problem for our girl Tris, right? There will also be no talking about the war that is happening in the rest of the city because there's no war in Ba Sing Se. And lastly, anybody who is staying there has to help around the Amity compound, basically being an extra member of the Amity for the time that they're there. Of course, all the other factions are going to be informed about this, meaning that Erudite is going to know that our Divergent group is there most likely. Luckily, Tris over here realizes that she isn't good at avoiding conflict. She actually starts the conflict most of the time, so she's like, we're not gonna be able to stay here long, are we? We need a backup plan stat. Now, obviously, she doesn't have a backup plan ready to go, so she decides to sneak around the Amity compound and listen to a conversation between Marcus and Johanna, who think they're not being listened to. Turns out, Marcus actually knows why the Erudite attacked Abnegation when they did, but he doesn't want to tell Johanna about that. No, he's just keeping that information to himself. But he's making it clear that it's so dangerous because all the leaders of the Abnegation faction were willing to die to keep it from Janine. Of course, Tris over here goes running over to Tobias to tell him all about this information that she just found out. They just come up with the plan to, go back into the city and overtake Erudite and, maybe get this information if possible. I'm like 99% sure that was already the plan, though. And if it wasn't the plan, what were you planning to do? Cut to the next day, Marcus comes over to them while they're eating lunch or breakfast or some sort of meal. They eat a lot while they're at the Amity compound. Let me tell y'all about that. Like, they eat so many times while they're there. I think half the scenes at Amity are just them eating. But anyways, he comes over to chit-chat with them and he's like, hey, me and the rest of Abnegation that is now here because this is the safe place to be right now, don't think it's selfless to stay here while other people are in danger in the city. So we need to go back to the city and we would like you to be our escorts. And of course our little group is like, absolutely we will, because Tris over here is gonna punch somebody soon. It's not an if, it's a when situation with her. She just got a little bit of trauma, just a ton of bit of trauma. When Marcus leaves, so does Tris because she wants more information about what he was talking to Johanna about. And he is not telling her anything. So overall, a really productive day, but now we get to that night and Tris is having a nightmare about killing her best friend Will. That'll keep you up at night sometimes, absolutely. So of course, she goes over to Tobias's room and they make out and eventually fall asleep. Because what are teenagers to do besides make out and eventually fall asleep? I don't know. Now, I may have forgotten to mention a key character that is also here with our little crew, and that is Peter. Not Edward, Peter. And can I just say, Peter is a true icon. I know I'm supposed to hate him, but I don't. He makes the books interesting, and it was honestly the only interesting part about the books for the last little bit of reading these. And by the last little bit, I mean the last 2 books. I understand why 13-year-old me was like, this isn't really good, and gave up on reading completely. I'm eating my hair, I'm so sorry. When she gets back to her room in the morning, Peter is just there, standing there, and it's clear he's looking for the hard drive. Because remember from the last book, she took the hard drive from Erudite, and then when she got to the Amity compound, she hid it in her little Amity room they gave her there. And now Peter is here to steal it, or at least try to. But then it's pretty obvious that he already has it in his pocket because there's just a giant square-shaped object there. They don't have smartphones back then. They don't have smartphones in the future when this happens. Now, to her credit, she does ask for it back first. He says no. And then she asks for it back again. He again says no. This turns into a whole argument, and then they start fist fighting because what else are they supposed to do? It's Peter and Triss. If those two are in a room, you can pretty confidently bet money that they're gonna start a fight at some point. And to be fair to her, this is a valid reason because she's not gonna let Peter over here take that hard drive back over to Erudite so they can use it all for their own power or erase it again. She doesn't know what they were planning with it, but she doesn't want them to have it. See, but we did just all hear the rules about them living here, so they're pretty quickly pulled apart, and Triss is taken to a room called the conflict room. In there, she's given this serum that makes her feel so light and peaceful and so nice. Yeah, she was giving a calming serum, a peace serum, and this basically turns her into a 14-year-old schoolgirl. Once she's let go from there, she goes off to find Tobias because of course she wants to see Tobias because Tobias is her crush and she's just so excited to see him, and Tobias is like, what the hell is wrong with you? This is not Triss. So he just picks her up, carries her straight over to Joanna over here and is like, hey, what did you give her? Now yeah, were they supposed to be kicked out of the compound? Probably, but they weren't, so Amity doesn't want to follow their own rules, okay? We're just dealing with it. Anyways, Joanna explains the whole peace serum thing to them, okay? And it turns out Amity over here is drugging their entire population. Yeah, they put it in the bread. Everybody in Amity is constantly getting a little bit of peace serum. That's why they're all so happy all the time over there. Yeah, I'm not kidding. This is real. Luckily, by that evening, the peace serum wears off, Triss calms down, and it's a really good thing because now Erudite trucks are rolling up to the Amity compound and it's a little too late for them to run, so they're just gonna try their best to blend in and hide that way. Luckily, our girl over here, she's smart enough, she goes to her room and she completely destroys the hard drive that's in there because she doesn't want Erudite to have a chance of getting their hands on that, because that's the thing that ran the simulation. Now, obviously, our group of Abnegation and some ex-Dauntless members don't blend in too well in Amity. Now, they are in Amity clothing, they're trying their best. They are trying their absolute best to blend in, but it doesn't really work. So it pretty quickly turns into them having to run, but not before they can shoot someone, because what's a Divergent book without that? Anyways, Triss tries to shoot this person, but after the whole shooting her best friend thing in the face to save her life, she can't really hold a gun or use it at this point, so Caleb over here ends up having to take the gun from her, shoot the person so they can get away with their lives. Now, unfortunately, a bunch of the abnegation that came with them, yeah, they're dead now, because they're not dauntless. They don't know how to run for their lives. They're just little peaceful abnegation members trying to help everybody, and they get killed very, very easily while they run away. R.I.P. We do get a little group that makes it out of here. Of course, Tobias, Triss, what would we do without them? Caleb also makes it, and his girlfriend, Susan, she's an abnegation member, and it seems like her and Caleb have a thing, but he's not an abnegation anymore, but kind of is because he left Erudite, so it's a little weird what's happening there, but they're like kind of flirty and together maybe. Once they're all to safely, Tobias turns pretty fast on her to ask what happened back there, because she completely froze up trying to shoot that person, and she should not be doing that. She is a dauntless over here. She is trained on how to act in these situations. She's assuring him, though, that this was just a one-time thing because she hasn't told anybody about her having to kill Will. Nobody was there at the time of her having to do that. Nobody knows about that yet, including him. So he has no clue why she would have any fear or hesitancy with a gun. Thankfully, they're all able to hop on a train and head back into the city where there are lots of places to hide. But the thing is, their train car is occupied by the factionless, so many factionless, including our old friend Edward, who was a dauntless initiate with Triss, but was stabbed in the eye with a butter knife by Peter. So, you know, he had to drop out because of that. But luckily, Peter's not here right now. We don't know if he's alive or dead. They're probably hoping he's dead. I'm not, though, because, again, he's the only humor in this book half the time. Now, this whole interaction doesn't look like it's gonna go too well with the factionless until Tobias over here says his name. And he just goes, yeah, I'm Tobias Eden, and they all go, whoa. You're Tobias Eden? You really mean it? And then everybody calms down. Now Tobias. Tobias over here does decide it's more fun to surprise our little group with what's going on and why they all calmed down after he mentioned his name, because he doesn't want to tell any of them about any details while they're on the train ride over there. No. He just decides it's going to be fun to surprise them with the fact that his mom, Evelyn, is alive. Oh, and also, she's the leader of the faction list, and also, he's known about this for like a year. Yeah, you see, Triss over here went to this woman's funeral. She was dead. R.I.P. Dead. But yeah, no, she's well and alive here, and we'll get an explanation later, but heck yeah, we got alliances, because that's his mom. Now, Tobias and Triss just don't really find time to talk about this during the day, so she ends up pretending to be asleep later that night and overhears these two talking. Tobias starts the conversation with her explaining that they're not going to help the factionless out at all if she doesn't explain what her plan is. See, when they walked in, there was this big map that had a lot of information that they couldn't really tell exactly what it was, but it's clear that this group has a plan. She tells him that this map documents all the safe houses they have for the factionless around the city. And the numbers on the board are not to document the total number of factionless in those safe houses, it's to document the total number of divergents, and let me tell you, there is a lot of them. It makes so much sense that factionless would have the most amount of divergence because people who end up factionless don't really fit in any faction. And when you fit into too many things, sometimes you don't actually fit into any of them well. It also turns out that the abnegation were also looking for divergent. They weren't hurting them. They clearly weren't working with Janine, but she has no clue why they were trying to find them either. All this is leading up to her telling him that her plan is to just overtake Erudite, and they're gonna need the help of a certain faction to do that. You know, the one that's trained in like military fighting and tactics and all that fun stuff. Yeah, they're gonna need Dauntless over here, but they don't need the Erudite Dauntless. See, some Dauntless have teamed up with Erudite and they're helping them out, and other Dauntless are over at the Candor headquarters and they're just hanging out trying to figure out what the heck to do now. They're not too happy that they were put under a simulation without their consent and were murdering people without their consent. Now let's just get to the next day now. These two are talking over here and he's like, hey, so me and Susan are actually gonna head over to one of the safe houses that have a lot of the abnegation at it to see what we can help out with over there. And Trista's like, okay, cool, whatever, I guess. Because she's gotta go talk to Evelyn now. And it turns out her father is actually from Erudite. Her father grew up as an Erudite. And the utter hatred this man had towards the Erudite faction starts to make a little more sense. Because he wasn't just assuming stuff about them, he knew that stuff. It was personal to him. She doesn't really need more information on this right now because her main concern is that Evelyn over here is trying to use Tobias. And she's not gonna let that happen, and she makes that very clear to Evelyn. Evelyn though, oh Evelyn, she's a little catty. She goes, oh, but Triss, you're just temporary. I'm forever. I'm his mother. Yeah, his mother that abandoned him and left him with an abusive father. Good job! Yeah, basically Triss says what I just said. So, good job, girl. At this point, she just walks away from this conversation, says goodbye to Caleb, and then her and Tobias head over to the Candor headquarters to meet up with the rest of the Dauntless who aren't absolutely evil. Now, it does get a little awkward when they first arrive because they get there and then pretty soon they're told that they've been ordered to put them under arrest, so, you know, not the welcome they were hoping for. Once they're cuffed, they're then taken to the leader of Candor, Jack Kang. Turns out some people actually think that Tobias was helping run the simulation because that's what he was doing while he was also under a simulation. They try to explain this to him that Tobias wasn't himself. He was also under a simulation at that time, but they're like, I don't know if I can believe you. Luckily for them though, there's truth serum in this world, so they're just gonna use that. After this, they're taken to a cell to wait until their interrogation that evening with the truth serum. They both fall asleep and then they're woken up once a group of Dauntless come in, including Christina, who shoves the rest of the people out of her way so she can go and hug Triss. Now again, Christina, who was dating Will, does not know that Triss, Will. But, like, girl kinda had to or else she would be dead, so, like, I understand, but it's a little awkward. It gets even more awkward when Christina is like, did you know Will is dead? Because she shouldn't know that Will is dead. And Triss just has to be like, yeah, I knew. Crazy, right? I figured that out before I had to run away. I saw him dead on the street. Wonder who killed him. Who could have done it? Now, she does know that this information is probably getting out tonight because she's gonna have truth serum coursing through her system because she's also getting interrogated. Don't really know why, but she is. She literally came to stop the simulation and that's what she did, but Okay. So she figures up she should soak up this last time of them being actual friends because they may not be after this moment. We do get some exciting news though, because Uriah, Marlene, and Lynn, some of the Dauntless-born initiates, are still alive and they are here in Kandor. The only shock is that Zeke, Uriah's older brother, is actually with Erudite as well as Tori. But now let's get to For's interview, because that one is first. He reveals his real name to everybody. He also reveals the real reason that he's in Dauntless, because his father abused him and he was too coward to stay in abnegation because of that. Those are his words, not mine. And obviously they go over how the first simulation didn't work on him, but the next simulation did. Because that simulation actually made him think that he was working on shutting down the other simulation, so you know. Whoops. He also has to explain that he really doesn't know how Triss broke him out of that other simulation, but he knows he heard her voice and he was able to break free because of that. And lastly, it's asked what his deepest regret is, and this is where he says he regrets being a coward because he was actually planning to leave Dauntless before Triss showed up. So he decided to stay in Dauntless instead of becoming a factionless. Pretty shortly after this, his interview ends and Triss is brought up. When she's asked what she did during the attack, she is so close to spilling her guts about Will, but she has enough divergence to fight the truth serum off a little bit, but she can still really feel it in her system. But she is able to just tell them that she met up with her brother and father. That is not her dad. Her dad is not on this board because he is no longer with us. When she's asked why she stopped fighting Tobias, she explains that she knew that only one of them could live and she didn't want to kill him. And her final question is also, what is your deepest regret? And this is where the whole killing Will thing comes out. She does explain that he was under the simulation and trying to kill her, and that was the only way to save her life, but she still feels so incredibly guilty about this. Everybody in the room after this says, thank you for your honesty, because that's the normal thing to do in Kandor, except for Tobias and Christina, who are both a little shell-shocked by this announcement. She tries to go over to Christina to say I'm sorry, but she is quickly shoved out of the way, and Uriah ends up coming over to comfort her, explaining that she had to do it. She had no other choice. After this, she spends a majority of the night up on the roof, debating different things you can do up there, debating life, fun stuff like that. Eventually, she goes back to her cot though, and then the next day, her and Tobias finally talk for the first time in like 2 or 3 days at this point. He's wondering why she didn't tell him that she had to kill Will, and she's like, what if you had to kill your best friend? Would you want to talk about it? This blows up into a whole big fight about how both of them are hiding things from each other, and eventually Tobias throws out that sometimes it's hard to be with her. Oh, like you're a cakewalk to be with, Mr. Strongman? Mr. I got trauma from my mom and dad. My mom faked her death and now she's alive. So yeah, that was rude and uncalled for. And then he just kind of leaves after saying this. Luckily, Triss has an actual good friend group of Uriah, Lynn, and Marlene over here, and they come over to hang out with her. Because they need to invite her to climb up the Hancock building, which is a really tall building, and, you know, they're Dauntless, so why not? They're not going till night, of course, because Dauntless, they always do stuff in the dark, right? And now they do invite Tobias later in the day, but he says no because he has a fear of heights. We all know that. Finally, once it's dark, our little group and a couple of extras head that way. See, but unfortunately, while they are walking out of the building, the glass windows and doors explode, and then Dauntless soldiers with blue armbands tied around their right arm come running into the building. Guns start to go off and people start dropping to the ground all around them. Triss gets shot as well, but eventually when she comes to, she's not bleeding and gets moving pretty fast because there's a random canister in the room now that is now spraying white smoke in the air, and she throws that away from her and pretty quickly figures out that nobody actually got shot. Everybody's just passed out. There's no blood anywhere. She doesn't really have time to think about this though, because all of a sudden she hears Eric's voice and he's talking. Where's Eric? Oh, Eric, hey buddy. Anyways, all of a sudden she hears Eric's voice and he's talking about how they can't just kill everybody, aka that's why they're not just shooting everybody in the head right now while they're passed out and why they didn't actually use real bullets. And then all of a sudden, Uriah is behind her, and this is when we figure out that Uriah is also a Divergent. These two now grab a couple jackets from some erudite Dauntless traders that sadly passed away and are on the ground, so their jackets are up for grab. They grab those so they can blend in a little better right now. They then come up with an actual plan that Uriah is going to run up to the top of the building to try to warn as many people as possible so they can evacuate out, and Triss is going to follow behind the erudite Dauntless guards to try to save as many Divergent as possible. Because it's clear that they're finding the Divergent because the Divergent aren't falling asleep or passing out because of this. Unfortunately for Triss, the erudite are clearly also looking for Divergent and are finding them faster than she can, but she does eventually find a kid, and she tells this kid to go to the staircase and run up as fast as possible. Get away from here. Only to see Eric himself standing behind her after the little kid has run away. They fight it out for a little bit, but it's clear he's winning, and it's also clear that he is not allowed to kill her yet. And then he just goes into this whole evil villain speech that I'm not gonna bore you with because they're all the same. And then guess who shows up? Uriah, but it's not in a fun way. Yeah, he's being escorted by erudite dauntless guards. Good job, Uriah. She kind of figures that they're just trying to find all the Divergent and kill them once they're all gathered up, but luckily for them, Triss has a knife to defend herself from all these guns. More Divergent are getting brought in, and then this little boy gets brought in, and one of the guards is like, well, the brain doesn't mature until 25, so he's not really useful to us. And then they shoot him in the head. Yeah, nobody's safe, not even the little kids. She screams. This captures his attention, so he walks over to her, planning to kill her next, obviously, because her divergence really can't be that complex, and also she's not 25. I mean, she probably only got 2 factions in her simulation test. Yeah, but we all know she got more than that. But Eric over here makes the mistake that most villains do, and he decides to gloat a little more about the fact that he's about to kill her. Except when he leans in, she stabs him with a knife in the gut. Then we just watch as he slumps to the ground, and the whole room erupts into pure chaos. There's real guns now, but eventually the chaos quiets down, and Tobias is next to Triss telling her that everything's okay. They got it under control now. How this all happened is that one of the Kandor actually is a Divergent as well, so she ran up the stairs to get all the Dauntless, because, you know, they're the ones that can actually fight the other Dauntless. They all gathered their weapons, got their guns, all that good stuff, and came down to fight the rest of them to save the Divergents. So everybody's safe now, but they do all now have a tiny metal disc in their arm that they quickly figure out is probably some form of long-term simulation that Janine has designed because, again, she just wants to control everybody. So, yeah, basically their worst nightmare has arrived because Janine can now just trigger a simulation from anywhere. They don't have to inject them right before the simulation starts. No, there's just a transmitter in them now. Meaning she could run multiple simulations with this thing. Now everybody's just trying to recover from this chaos. Eventually Caleb shows up with some of the other Abnegation who are just here to try to help out and, help heal people right now. But he's, just chilling for a bit, and also Marcus is here, because why wouldn't Marcus be here? Oh, and our good friend Eric over here, yeah, he wasn't dead, so they get to interview him about Janine's plans and figure they're gonna find out all this cool info, but turns out he really doesn't know anything. See, Janine's a smart person. She's not gonna tell all her plans to just one person. She's probably told little bits and pieces of it to many, many different people. Later in the day, Jack King comes down to the cafeteria and he asks all the Divergents to step forward. And turns out Marcus is also a Divergent. Apparently, everybody in this city is a frickin' Divergent at this point. He just goes over the fact that they know the erudite came here for the Divergent, but they don't really know why they want the Divergent. And then this man starts going on how this was a peaceful invasion. Mind you, a child got shot in the head, but sure, peaceful invasion. So he's gonna try to figure out a peace treaty with the erudite, basically to save his faction's ass, and the other Dauntless as well. Now Triss pretty instantly gets a bad feeling about this because, he's not gonna save the Divergent if it means saving the rest of his faction, now is he? Our girl does point out that this wasn't a peaceful invasion. They are now all injected with random metal discs that can probably start a simulation from anywhere, and they can be under her control at any point in time. They did not consent to this. This was not a peaceful thing you do to people. A Kandor, no. Apparently they don't actually think that's what the metal discs are. Yeah, I don't know what they think they are. Apparently they're just a fun new accessory to them. Idiots. Safe to say, it's become very clear that Kandor does not plan to attack Erudite, and it's probably time for our group to head back to the faction list and try to get Dauntless over there as well so they can actually have a fighting chance. As our group is trying to figure out what to do now, Tori and Zeke show up. Yeah, turns out they were undercover spies at Erudite. Nobody really knew about this, but they're coming back now because Tori is hurt. I keep eating the same piece of hurt. Zeke's like, yeah, I'm happy to tell y'all everything under Truth Serum, but can we fix Tori first, please? They help out Tori right away, and luckily after some Truth Serum on Zeke, they are allowed peacefully into the community just to play kumbaya with the Kandors who don't want to believe in the war and don't want any part of it. Now, they didn't really learn anything that we don't already know, but hey, they were there. Let's just cut a little later into the day. Back in the cafeteria, because that's apparently the only place everybody hangs out, she sees Kara, Will's older sister, talking with Christina. These two end up walking out of the room, Triss follows them, and she overhears them talking about Triss killing Will, but Kara is explaining to Christina that she may hate Triss, but she understands why she had to do it. Kara isn't necessarily trying to make Christina forgive Triss, she's just trying to make it easier for Christina to be around Triss. And from what she overhears, it sounds like maybe, just possibly, her and Christina can be friends again one day. But we've got more pressing matters right now because Jack Kang is meeting with Janine in the morning at 7 a.m. It's basically guaranteed that Janine is not going to be there. She's just going to send a representative to talk to Jack. We also know it's a very high risk that Jack is just going to sacrifice all the Divergents to save everybody else in his faction. So our little Dauntless core group that we have, Uriah, Marlene, Lynn, Tobias, some other people as well, Zeke, all those cool people decide that they need to go listen into this conversation so they can act accordingly. But before we can do that, we need to have a little throwback to the truth serum interrogation with Tobias when he admitted he was a coward, mainly because he was planning to leave Dauntless and be a factionless because he didn't feel like he belonged there anymore. See, Dauntless has taken that and run with it. Everybody is calling him a coward, everybody is kind of poking fun at him all the time, so he decides to shut them all up by throwing Marcus against a wall and punching him in the face in front of everybody there, and that gets everybody to shut up. Now, why is Tobias doing this? Well, that is because Tobias really wants to earn the trust of all the Dauntless, because Tobias over here, if he wants to bring all the Dauntless to the factionless and make them work together, he knows that he needs to be in some sort of leadership position, and he can't do that if the entire faction thinks he's a coward. Now, we can get to the negotiation. This guy, Mac, shows up. It's not Janine, like we thought. He's just there to talk to them. And he pretty quickly says that this isn't a negotiation. This is just him telling them what they need to do to not all die. So firstly, they want all the Dauntless leaders that are currently held captive returned to them, the ones that are working for Erudite now. Secondly, they want to know the name of everybody who was not injected with the transmitters. He's asking why they want all this information, but of course he doesn't get an answer on that. This guy Max is responding exactly how Janine would respond, meaning that Janine is overhearing everything that's happening here and is telling Max exactly what to say. So our little group was like, maybe we could go find Janine, except Lynn over here, one of our Dauntless girlies, doesn't hear this conversation and decides just to shoot Max because he seems like he's about to leave, so might as well shoot him. And of course, everybody else starts shooting guns, obviously. Triss over here, though, knows Janine is close and is not letting this girl get away again, so she starts taking off, going to get Janine. But then she turns down this alley, and there are 3 Dauntless Erudite, and one of them is frickin' Peter. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. We should not be excited, but we are. Also, it's Miles Teller. Like, come on. And of course, our little snake Peter over here decided to rejoin Erudite. Look, this man just wants the easiest life possible, and he's made the hardest life for himself by trying to get the easiest life. Whoops. She calls him a traitor. She's about to start this whole big fight with these dudes because she can take them, even though she's a small girl, but she's a really well-trained small girl. And yeah, these guys might be really well-trained too, but she could have done it. But then she hears one of her friends scream, like bloody murder scream, like it might be dying scream. So she decides she should go and run back to them instead of stay and find Janine and maybe die fighting these guys. And turns out it's Shauna, which is one of the newer Dauntless members that we're introduced to. She's part of this core little friend group we've been having, all that good stuff, but it's not looking good for Shauna. She is laying in a pile of her own blood. Pool. Pool is the word I was looking for. That's the word in the script, not pile. Have you ever seen a pile of blood? She is laying in a pool of her own blood. They get her back to Candor headquarters, get her to some doctors, and Tobias turns on Triss once again, being like, dude, why did you risk your life once again? And Triss is like, dude, I had to get Janine. And he's like, no, you didn't. That was pointless. You weren't gonna get her. And she's like, maybe I could've. Tobias has enough of this argument and tells her that if she keeps putting her life at risk for no good reason, he will end this relationship. He is done. He does not want to be here when she accidentally offs herself, or kind of purposely offs herself, but in like a slightly heroic way, but like she's kind of trying to right now. But he does tell her that he still believes that the old Triss is in there, and then kisses her and leaves. So just a whirlwind of emotions, man. So I should warn you, in the next 2 books, their relationship sucks. Like, it sucks. It's so bad. It's not good. It's not cutesy. It's not fun. I actually wish they would have broken up. I think it would be better for both of them. I mean, we'll talk about them more in the end. Things happened in between then and now. Anyways, after these 2 fight later that day, all the Dauntless have a secret meeting in Kandor headquarters because they figure that Kandor is gonna go along with this, and that basically means giving all of Dauntless back as well, not just the Dauntless leaders. They all decide their best bet is to go back to the Dauntless headquarters. Nobody is there right now. The Erudite Dauntless are at Erudite. Nobody has gone back to the Dauntless headquarters. They went to Kandor instead because there's a bunch of cameras down there, but they think it's worth the risk now. Obviously, before they can all go there though, they want to execute Eric because he's committed so many crimes against their community. And to do that, they also need to nominate leaders so they can all agree to do that. 4 is nominated, Tori is nominated, a random older guy is nominated, and so is Triss. They can only have 3 though, so one of them will not be able to be a leader. They're gonna put it up to a vote, but Triss is like, yo, I'm literally 16. Not for me, homie. Bye. So now we have our new leaders of Dauntless being Tobias, Tori, and some random middle-aged guy. His name is Harrison, if you wanted to know that, but like, Harrison doesn't matter. If your name is Harrison, you matter, but Harrison in this book don't matter. It's pretty quickly decided between these 3 that they're gonna execute Eric. And shortly after they decide this, Jack comes over the loudspeakers and announces that they will be following Erudite's orders. Now, should our group focus on getting out of there? Maybe, but they really want to kill this guy, so they run over to do that. After he's taken care of, Jack walks in the cell and he's like, I was supposed to give this guy back and now he's dead. And they're like, yeah, and also we're all leaving, bye. So he's a little bit screwed, but sucks for you, buddy. Anyways, they all get back to Dauntless headquarters and start getting paintball guns and shooting all the cameras. Oh, and finally, we get our first good news of this book. Shauna over here, who is just a minor side character, she's gonna live. Hey, she might be paralyzed, but she's gonna live. At dinner that evening, Tobias comes over, grabs Triss, and is like, hey, we gotta go to a meeting tonight. And she's like, okay? And while they're on the way to the train, it's revealed that he actually went through his fear landscape today, again, because he just does that for a fun time sometimes, you know, because why wouldn't you? And his fears have changed. He still has 4 of them, but one of them has switched out. There used to be one where he had to shoot an innocent person and, you know, reasonable, but now it's been replaced by him just having to watch her die because she sacrificed her life for no reason. Somebody's trying real hard to do that right now. But anyways, let's move on from that fun topic. They've got to meet up with Factionless now because that's who he's meeting with. This meeting happens and his mom and him just agree to take down Erudite together, and then afterwards the Factionless and Dauntless will take over as leadership of the city until everything settles down. Now Triss over here is a little ticked off because she was brought to this meeting by him because he said he wanted her judgment on these matters, but didn't consult her once during that. He agreed to all of this without ever talking to her. So she's like, hey, yo, why'd you bring me here then? Because she's convinced that Evelyn is just trying to use him and she has something else planned. Triss gets a little brutal over here and she's like, hey, just because somebody hates your father as much as you do doesn't mean they have your best interest in mind. We should still be trying to figure out if we actually trust her. Now, obviously he doesn't want to hear any of that. Oh my word, my flashlight's been on. Obviously, he doesn't want to hear any of that, so they both get back on the train, but kind of separately this time, and just head back to Dauntless HQ. They get back, Triss goes to bed, and then she's shaken awake by Christina because apparently there's something going on with the pit involving a simulation. It's obviously not affecting everyone, but it is affecting a few people. And all she really knows is that they said something about Divergent, so Triss pops right up and they run out there. They actually end up having to run all the way up to the roof. Marlene, one of their friends, one of the Dauntless, is up there as well with a couple others, and they are clearly under a simulation right now. Marlene starts to speak now, saying that she has a message for the Divergent, saying that every 2 days until one of them delivers themselves over to Erudite, this will happen again. And then all 3 of them go to step back off the roof. Triss throws herself forward, but she isn't grabbing for Marlene. No, she's grabbing for the little 8-year-old Dauntless girl that is up there. She grabs her hand, and Christina grabs the guy up there that was named Hector, which is one of their friend's little brother. I'm sorry, I got that reversed. Christina dives for the little girl, Triss dives for Hector. There's a lot of words. The 2 they caught snap out of the simulation once they're firmly on the roof again, and then when they look down, they just see Marlene's body on the ground. Yeah, she's dead. And our girl, who has been looking for a noble way to sacrifice herself for 250 pages, maybe 300 at this point, knows that she isn't gonna let this happen again. But they really have to wait till the next morning to start going over plans. Her and Christina end up talking and end up sobbing together, and this rekindles their friendship, and it's revealed that Christina has already forgiven Tris because she knows that Tris didn't have a choice and she would have done the same thing in her situation, and she doesn't want to risk losing another good friend because of it. Yeah, overall, just bad vibes in the Dauntless HQ right now. Nobody's really having a good time, and when Tobias and her talk, he knows that she's going to want to try to give herself up to save everybody else because that's Tris. She's abnegation. She is so selfless. That is the way she was raised, was to protect others before herself. But he's trying to convince her that they're putting in new safety measures, they're not gonna let this happen again, but she doesn't know if she can risk it. But she pretends she has no plans of going over to Erudite to give herself up. She has some time to herself now, she wanders around for a bit, and then goes to the last place she remembers feeling safe, which is Tobias's little apartment. When she gets there, he's not there, and she just sits in this familiar comfort that is this room. And then, of course, Tobias comes in a little later, and he makes it clear that he still knows that she still plans to go to Erudite. She just tells him that she has to go. Everybody here will be fine without her. And Tobias is like, oh, excuse me? What about me? What about me? I'm not gonna be fine if you leave. They keep this line of conversation going for a while, and then they end up making out because that's the normal for them. Fight, make out, argue, make out, have a conversation, make out. If they talk, they're gonna make out at the end of it. But anyways, at the end of all of this, she promises that she is not going to go to Erudite. Yeah, she don't mean that promise though. She has no plans of keeping that promise. And once he's asleep, sure enough, she sneaks out of the room to go meet up with Christina, who she just tells that she's planning to meet up with her brother in abnegation and talk to him about some stuff. And then, really casually, in a really chill way, just transitions into talking about how the simulations weren't at a random time. They happened at that time for a reason, and it was because abnegation was about to share a lot of information that Janine didn't want them to share. And now, Janine has that information. She explains that she doesn't know what this information is because Marcus over here won't tell anybody. But the point of this conversation is just to make sure somebody else knows what Marcus knows in case Tris never sees these people again, and she kind of feels like she's never gonna see these people again because she's basically signing the certificate to her death. And after this, she heads straight over to Erudite. She gets a super friendly welcome committee, actually. No, she's thrown in a jail cell right away. Like instantly. She arrives and then she's thrown in there. She's stuck in there for a while thinking about how she's definitely going to die today until she's brought out to come and talk to Janine, who gives her a nice little tour of the science lab. How cool! We're learning new stuff on the day of our death. And this cool tour ends with Janine leading Tris to a room with a table on it with some sciencey stuff around it, and Janine's like, hey, so just so you know, that table is where you're gonna die, fun fact. And it's worked out perfectly for Janine because she really wants to develop a simulation that works on divergence. And since Tris has such a strong divergence in her, this will be a great person to test it on because if it works on her, it's basically gonna work on anybody. So before she dies on that table right there, they'll figure that out. But after that's figured out, she's dead. She's taken back to her cell, and then Peter comes to get her to take her to a room that has an MRI machine in it. Now, she knows there's a way for her to get some information for herself on how her brain works because she's also curious. So this girl, knowing she's gonna die soon, tells them that she's not gonna cooperate unless they also explain all of what they're doing to her. And at first, Janina's like, no, we're not gonna do that. We can just force you to do this stuff. And she's like, okay, good luck keeping me still. I can shake my head. I can move enough to mess up the MRI. So this is how they come to the agreement that Tris will also learn most of what they're discovering from experimenting on her. Now, we're gonna get into some science terms and stuff like that, and I am not the person to explain that. I'm gonna do a rough explanation of what the book explains, and I'm not even 100% sure if that's right, but I figure it is. I figure she did her research. But anyways, I hated science, was never good at it, and you're not gonna get the wonderful science breakdown. I'm sure somebody has done that, but it won't be me. Let me tell you that much. Anyways, so they do the MRI scan, and they find out that her lateral prefrontal cortex is much larger than the average. That's the part of the brain that is responsible for organizing her thoughts and actions to obtain her goals. So she's really good at being like, hey, I want to do this, and then I have all this big brain space to be able to do that pretty easily because like she's got a big brain. Okay, but here's the thing. Her orbital orbitofrontal cortex is smaller than the average person's. This is the reward-seeking part of your brain. See, you can say you learned stuff from me besides random book lore. Okay, but this all means she doesn't really care about rewards. She doesn't need to be like, I'm gonna get a little sweet treat when I go and run all my errands today. You know, she's not gonna get that coffee because she went to Walmart. But she is really good at just doing the things she sets her mind to. And of course, all the bright erudite scientists in the room start theorizing on what they can do to change the simulation to make it work on a brain like hers. And she starts freaking out because if they can see all of this from just an MRI scan, what if they can actually make a simulation that works on her in other Divergents? She doesn't want to be under anybody else's control. That is one of her greatest fears. But you know, she got what she wanted, so she's led back to her cell, only to make the lovely discovery that Tobias is here now. What? She's screaming at him, asking, why are you here? What are you doing? And this man just goes, you die, I die. Mind you, she's 16, 17 at this point, and he's 18. Guys, you have so much more life to live. So much. So it kind of seems right now that he just came here to be the repercussion of her actions of her coming here. So that sucks for her, but I don't know what lesson you're trying to teach her because she's gonna die anyways, dude. Why are you also dying? But you know, they don't get to talk. They're not in the same cell, so they're just sitting there in their quiet little cells all by themselves until the next day when she's put through simulation and it doesn't work. She's divergent still, she gets out of it. Then the next day, she's taken back to the room with the table in it that she was told she's gonna die on. Oh, goody. There's a syringe over there, but it has a fluid that doesn't look like a simulation serum. She doesn't know what's in there though. And it gets even better because Tobias is brought in the room. Woo! They tell him that they're going to ask him some questions after they inject her with whatever's in that syringe because they're counting on his selflessness to kick in and reveal big secrets for them. She tells him to not give them any information because she's going to die anyways. What are a couple extra days? But right before she's injected with the serum, we learn it's not a death serum, it's just something that's gonna cause her pure terror. And you know, once she's injected with this, it doesn't go well for her. She's not having a good time. She doesn't know what the heck is happening in that room because she is not mentally there anymore. But eventually she's injected with a sedative and starts to calm down a little. When she comes to, she hears Tobias explaining that the only way he's going to tell her anything is if he's able to go over there and touch Triss right now. See her. Feel that she's real and safe. I mean, she's not safe, that's for sure, but you can feel that she's real, buddy. She gives a yes, he runs over there, they press their foreheads together, and then he turns to her, explaining that he is ready to mark all the safe house locations for the factionless on her map. Tobias is then taken away so he can go mark on a map all the fun locations and stuff like that, and then Janine says, all right, bring him in. Who's he, you may be asking? Well, let me tell you. But before he can come in, they explain that they used the stress simulation today to get more information on her brain, and since she was promised full transparency on her procedure, she needs to know who is assisting Janine. This little snake. And that's when her very own brother walks in the room. Yet Caleb isn't at an abnegation safe house. No, he's right here. Torturing his sister, was the one to tell her how to get his sister here. To torture and then kill. Of course, she's shocked and hurt by this, but they don't really get to talk, so she's just taken back to her cell and then passes out till the next day because her body is so exhausted from what it went through with all that stress. Her heart rate was skyrocketing during that entire time. Her body just shuts down after, basically. But now, the next day, after some stuff has happened, Peter is escorting her back to her cell, and Tobias pulls this funky little move because he's also out of his cell right now with a guard and drops to the ground, grabs a gun, gets Triss, and starts running away with her. At first we think he's trying to escape, but no, they just go to a random closet because he needs to explain to her that he isn't here on a suicide mission. No. He's here for two reasons. One was to find out where a couple of the control rooms are with the main information they'll need in them, so when they invade, they know what they need to destroy. And the second reason was to make sure that Triss knows to hold on, because they have people coming to rescue them. But she is so beaten up, like mentally beaten up at this point, she doesn't know if she'll be able to. She is checked out of life at this point. She wants this to be over. I'm not kidding when I say she is being tortured right now. It's so mentally messed up. It's not so much the like physical torture almost, but even the stress simulation still had that physical aspect because her body was so stressed out and rigid, like she's sore after that. She's so tired, she doesn't want to be here, and she's just done. But he says that she needs to survive this because they can get her out of here and she can have a life after this. She just needs to hold on a little longer. And then, of course, they kiss. Quickly after they kiss, people come into the closet, pull them apart, and put them right back in their cells. The next day, she does end up having a little conversation with Caleb, and it's a lot of insulting on her end, rightfully so, and a lot of trying to explain his bullcrap to her on his end. Not rightfully so. Later that day, she gets to test out another simulation serum. Woo! This one actually works on her pretty well. For a little bit. It's basically Tobias rescuing her from this place, but eventually she does figure out that it's a simulation and gets out of there. Janine screams in frustration when Triss wakes up, demanding that she tells her what clues her in on these simulations being simulations, or that she will kill her. Triss is like, dude, you're already gonna kill me. And she's not gonna tell her because she hates this woman and everything she stands for. She's not going to help her out. But the thing with Janine, and so many villains, is she doesn't think she's doing anything wrong. She just thinks she's trying to save everybody in her head. Triss finally loses it and just launches herself at Janine and starts clawing at whatever skin she can get her fingernails on. And as she's getting dragged out of that room, she's telling Janine, you failed. You can't control me. You'll never be able to control me. Just rubbing dirt in the wound. Because she knows in that moment, she has a right to gloat. She's broken Janine Matthews. And it seems like maybe everything's gonna work out. Maybe they'll stop the experiments and just leave her here for a bit. I don't really know what she's thinking, but she thinks, maybe it's all right, guys. Maybe I can make it to the rescue squad. Until Peter walks in the next day at 8 a.m. and he's like, hey, your execution is moved up till tomorrow. And they're just gonna continue the experiments on Tobias over here. Peter and her actually have a little, like, conversation, sweet moment here of her saying that she could have forgiven him for trying to kill her during initiation. He responds saying that he never asked her to do that, but then gives her the time. She hasn't had the time the entire time she's been here. How many times can I say time? But the time right now is 9:24. Now, eventually Peter does return to the cell because it's time for her execution. She has a little moment with Tobias here where they're able to say goodbye through the cells because Peter more allows it than anything. And then she's taken to the room with the table. And once she's laying down on that table, for the first time in this entire book, she thinks, I don't want to die. She realizes she has so much to live for still, and knows she has made a huge mistake by sacrificing herself here. There's so much good she could still do, but she didn't see that till right now. She didn't see that until right before the end for her. Of course, she wants to be able to protect the ones she loves, but she wants to be able to live with them and experience life with them still. And now it doesn't look like she's ever going to have that chance again. But they just inject her with that serum, and Peter says to her, be brave, which is what most Dauntless say to each other, but she has no clue why he would say that to her now. And then the heart monitor stops beeping. But she can still feel herself breathing. She heard the heart monitor stop, but she's still here, breathing in and out. It's shallow, but it's real. Peter's told to go and take her to the lab, so he starts wheeling her out. Then they make a little pit stop, grab Tobias, and they all start booking it out of there with a very alive Triss. That's right. Peter of all people, is the one that is saving her life right now. They're running out of that building. They're trying to get to the factionless to be safe with them, but they also know people are chasing them. And the smartest thing they can do right now is actually just stop and hide in a building nearby, because they're not gonna think these people are gonna stop anywhere nearby. That would be stupid. But luckily, this works out for them. We get a little conversation with Peter here on why he saved her life, and basically he just didn't want to be in debt to anybody. He can't stand owing anybody anything. And this is because back in the Amity compound, somebody was aiming a gun at his head when the erudite first got there, and she shoved him out of the way and was preparing to take the bullet for him. Tobias and Triss are like, okay, cool, so I guess we just have to make sure you owe us all the time so you don't betray us? And Peter's basically like, yep, that's right. They finally make it back to where the abnegation live, because that's where most of the factionless are now. She's greeted by a few of her friends, but is quickly taken upstairs because, again, she has just endured days and days of torture for hours. She is ready to pass out. When she finally wakes up, she gets ready, goes downstairs, and meets up with all of her friends and everybody else downstairs so they can start going over the plan they have to overthrow Erudite. And everything Everything's going pretty well until Edward walks in and sees Peter, the guy who stabbed him in the eye with a butter knife and caused him to be factionless. They end up having a little scuffle, but nobody dies and no butter knives are involved this time. Then later that day, we get to catch up with our best buddy, Marcus. Oh, goody. Anyways, Marcus over here, she goes over there to talk to him about the information that she knows that he knows once again, but he won't tell her anything about that information still. The only thing she gets out of him is that the abnegation were planning to share that information with the public and Erudite didn't want that. So that's why Janine attacked everybody. We do get a little hint that they actually aren't from here. They were all placed here. And whatever information Janine got correlates with that. Because apparently there's some instructions in that information that she doesn't want them to follow. The only reason he actually tells her all of this is because the factionless are planning to completely destroy Erudite and all the data they have. He doesn't want that data to be lost. He knows they need that data as a city. He wants to be able to share this with the entire city, and so does Triss. So that's how Triss ends up teaming up with her best buddy over here, Marcus. When she meets back up with all her friends, she's informed that they're about to be told the attack plans, and all they know right now is that there's going to be teams of Dauntless and Factionless combined. One team is going to be attacking Erudite directly and slowly making their way up the building, destroying data as they go. Another team is going to quickly work their way up the Erudite building to kill off certain key Erudite officials. And this is all happening in 3 days' time. Christina is the only one who says anything to Triss about how this doesn't feel right. This feels like what Erudite did to abnegation. Nobody else really has a problem with it though, because they figure Erudite kind of brought this on themselves because they attacked abnegation through Dauntless, but also that was the decision by one woman. And you're talking about killing a lot more Erudite people than just this one lady. Eventually, Tobias comes and finds her to let her know that she will be in his group during the infiltration. And at that point, she's like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Still can't hold a gun that well. But the real reason is her plan with Marcus. She needs to get that data. She wants to get that data. And this is the only person who can help her do it. Of course, with everything she's been through, her loving boyfriend's like, yeah, stay here and rest. Having no clue, she's teaming up with his abusive father. So now we get this little side quest with Marcus, Triss, and Christina because she gets roped into these plans of them going to visit the Amity to talk to them about what the factionless are planning to do to the Erudite. So hopefully Amity can help them from just a lot of unnecessary deaths. And of course, our good friend Peter sees them going to Amity and he's like, can I come? So yeah, here goes our little ragtag group over to Amity to talk to Johanna. They tell her the whole thing about the Dauntless plan of attack, the factionless, yada, 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 all the information I've already given you. They also want to talk to some of the Erudite that are currently at the Amity base seeking shelter there. She agrees to this, but nobody's up right now. It's really late in the evening at this point, so she's like, hey, just stay here. We'll talk to everybody in the morning, okay? Late the next morning, she calls another meeting and talks to everybody, and she's like, hey, I think we should be non-violent peacekeepers during these disagreements to try to save as many lives as possible. Let's talk about that instead of just not contributing to anything at all. While all the Amity are discussing this, Triss finds Kara, Will's sister, because she's still Erudite, and she wants to see if she has some key information she's looking for. At first, she's really not sure if she's going to help, but luckily Christina is there, so she agrees to and tells them to meet her and the other Erudite in the Erudite dorm later that day. So they go back to the meeting only to find out that Amity has just decided to not have any doings with what's going on right now. They don't want to be involved. They will stay uninvolved. But Johanna, she's not too happy with that actually, and she tells everybody that she will step down as a leader here, but she will be going into the city to be a non-violent peacekeeper and try to save lives there. And if anybody wants to come with her, they can. And she walks out and quite a few Amity follow her. Now back to our Erudite part of this plan. So after talking of them, they've decided that some of the Erudite are going to try to come with them to break into the Erudite building so they can send the information that is on the Erudite computers that they want to spread to the other factions just straight to the computers of the other factions. So even if everything is destroyed in Erudite, they can't destroy that information. And honestly, there's a lot more to the plan, but I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. It's pointless because we're about to go through it, okay? Just hold on to your seatbelts. Fasten your seatbelts. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. Erudite just has really sick spy tools for some reason. Like when all the glass broke earlier in the book, when they came to shoot everybody with the little metal discs that have the transmitters in them, the way all the windows shattered without bullets was these little sonic sound devices that put out this frequency that cracks glass, which I find fascinating. So now that they've got everybody on board for this plan, the factionless are actually attacking this afternoon, so they get in a truck and they go, go, go. They make it about a half a block away from the Erudite headquarters when they are stopped by a whole lot of people carrying a whole lot of guns, and it is all Candor that is under the simulations from Erudite currently. Now, there's no other way to get to the Erudite headquarters from street level, so they decide, in a very dauntless fashion by Triss, to just go up and crawl through a couple windows and get over that way. Now, lucky for them, a window lines up on the 3rd floor, so it's not that high, but they do have to find a random ladder in this building to climb across to the other window, because it's not just like they can take a step over. No, they're gonna have to like slowly climb across this ladder. That's so fun. Mind you, it's not all dauntless right now. No, no, no. We have freaking Abnegation and Erudite with us. They don't want to be doing this, but they gotta. Now, the cool little round disc that can shatter glass, they of course throw one of those across because it causes no noise besides the glass breaking, so they break the window across the way, put the ladder across, but when that window breaks, all the Candor on the ground start shooting up. It's very clear that they are triggered by motion. So these people crossing this ladder bridge need to make sure they have no motion that falls down to the Candor, or they're dead and they will be riddled with bullet holes. Now, of course, in Triss fashion, she is the one to crawl across first. Now, when she gets there, it actually leads into a woman's bathroom, apparently. I don't know how this bathroom is set up, where there's the window that they can't really see, so Triss gets in, they don't see the obviously broken window, and she ends up chatting to this one girl, and everything's fine, luckily. This girl doesn't report anybody crawling through a window, so I guess she didn't see them crawl through a window, even though she was in the room. I truly don't understand this part of the book or how this room works. Like, is there, okay, wait. So, like, okay, where can I draw? Okay, so, like, does the room work like, here's a wall, and then there's an opening here, and then this is the rest of the room back here? Like, is this just the wall and the windows right here so you can't see? Is that how this room is working? This is probably a big aphantasia moment for me because I have aphantasia. I can't visualize stuff in my head. I literally, like, when I'm reading, I'm just looking at the pages having a great time. I think that's why I read slow, because I'm acting out every single line, because it's not like I can picture stuff in my head. That would be super sick if I could, but I can't. So yeah, see, wall, solid wall here, but little opening, and then the windows right here so they could, like, walk back here. Maybe there's a little bench or something for people to sit on. And it's just like this cute little area, but the rest of the bathroom is behind this wall. We spent too much time talking about this wall. Okay, anyways, okay, Triss gets in just fine, and most of the other group does as well, except for one of the Erudite boys that is with them. He has some glasses that are in his pocket, and those glasses fall out, and then he gets shot so many times. It's really not pretty. But everybody else is okay! Yay! Kara now starts leading. I don't have a picture for Kara. Okay, give me like 2 seconds. Kara over here starts leading them through the Erudite headquarters because, again, she's Erudite. I feel like I've said Erudite so much in the last 5 minutes. Oh my word, it doesn't sound like a real word anymore. But anyways, she's leading them through and she gets them to that first control room where they start working on getting all the data sent to the other faction computers. Triss is having a great time while they're doing all this. She's having a little trauma flashback because this is the floor where she was being tortured for days on days on days just a couple days ago. So she's not having a great time. And then guess what? Caleb walks in the room and he's like, "What are you doing here?" Also, he's holding a gun, telling them to stop whatever they're doing. They explain to him that they're actually trying to kind of help him right now. They're trying to get all the Erudite data out of here so it can't get destroyed by all the factionless coming to ruin it all. He doesn't fully believe this though, because Marcus is there, and I can't blame him. I wouldn't trust any plan that has to do with Marcus either if I didn't know about the plan prior to this. Hey, that's her last name, Pryor. But like, hey buddy, you're not trustworthy either. You're actually the biggest snake in this book, and there's Peter. You're the biggest snake in this book and Peter exists. How is that possible? And then Caleb and Marcus just get into this weird like squabble that Triss doesn't really understand, because Marcus is talking about how they've completed their mission and they all need to know about it, and Caleb's like, "No, they don't. We don't want to get that news out there." And Triss is like, "Huh?" And he's talking about how they all have happy lives here and he doesn't want to lose that, and it's just not making any sense to her, okay? And Caleb, again, buddy, your life is not that good. Your parents are both dead. You almost killed your own sister. What are you talking about, a good life? And then this man has the audacity to go, "Triss, you gotta trust me." Excuse-moi? She? Trust you? No, we are so far past that, baby boy. No. And yeah, this blows up in his face because He is helping the woman that tried to kill her. And the words she says to him cut pretty deep because all of a sudden he gets this really blank look on his face, deserved, and tells them that they're not going to find the information they're looking for here. It would be on a much more private computer. So really that just means it's either in a lab computer somewhere or it's in Janine's private office. Now where do we think the private computer would be with all the important information that Janine is really secretive of? In Janine's office. You're right, good job. Before they leave to go check these places, because they should rule out both, but they're really planning to head to Janine's office, Marcus grabs the gun from Caleb and basically just pistol whips him with it. Marcus is not a good guy, but he kind of deserved it. Like, come on. On their way up to Janine's office, they run into Edward again and end up having to fight him because to the factionless and dauntless that are here, it looks like this little group that we have going is betraying everybody else. They get Edward injured enough where he's not a problem anymore, but unfortunately, sad for us, Christina also gets injured. She's not gonna die, she's just not coming with us for the rest of the journey. When they finally get to the office with Janine's private computer in it, there's 2 doors leading into this room. So Marcus goes in the right one and Tris goes in the left one. And when she walks into this room, the door locks behind her. Goody! It welcomes her by name and also calls her a second generation, which she doesn't really understand what that means. Like, they've been in the city for a while. A spray then comes out from the walls and all of a sudden she's in a simulation. And she's told she has 5 minutes to get out of this simulation and get to the other door before she dies. Now, there's nothing in her way right now, so she figures this is gonna be pretty easy until, herself pops up in front of her and she now has to fight herself. Talk about fighting your inner demons. So she ends up fighting herself, eventually ends up getting the upper hand somehow, but then at the very end when she has the gun and is ready to shoot her other mirrored self, her mirrored self turns into Will and she's forced to shoot Will again. Luckily, she does and gets to the other door and gets through. When she gets into that room, she can hear Tori's voice. Tori, what are you doing here? And Janine is telling Tori that she didn't kill her brother. Janine, I'm pretty sure you put the orders in to do so. When Tris gets over there, she tells Tori to drop the gun because they still need to get the password from Janine so they can get the information to other computers and not lose it forever. But Tori doesn't do that. No, Tori's finger is already over the trigger. So Tris has to jump over, knock the gun out of Tori's hand, saving Janine for the time being. And it worked for the most part. Janine still got a bullet in the leg though. Then they get into this whole fight. Tori is calling Tris a traitor at this point, but Tris is trying to explain that there's important information on that computer that they really need to get. Tris gets sole control over the gun. It looks like she's going to be able to get into this computer, but before she can do anything, Tori stabs Janine and like really stabs Janine. Janine is not gonna make it, guys. Tris doesn't know how to feel in this moment because all the sacrifices she made, sacrificing Tobias's trust to work with his father behind his back, was all in vain. She's getting nothing out of it now. And then, wouldn't you know it, Tobias walks in the room and he's definitely looking a little hurt right now and starts going off to her about how she could trust Marcus. She's trying to explain to him that everything Marcus told her made sense. It all adds up. And she just really wanted to know the truth. Her and Tobias have a pretty passionate like face-off for a little bit, but nothing really gets said during that because he's just more the dark and broody type over here. And luckily, Uriah is the one who takes her downstairs, where she will be held so she can eventually be interrogated about this whole situation. And as they're walking down the stairs to get to this little area where they're containing everybody they want to interrogate instead of just kill, one of the factionalists asks Uriah for his gun, so that if anything happens, somebody has a free hand and has a gun that they can use. Tris notices, though, that the factionalist guy already has a gun, but doesn't really think to mention this. And then she gets to the area with some of the other traitors, like Christina, and Caleb is also there. Eventually, Tobias comes down to grab Caleb so he can shut down the security surrounding Janine's lab so the factionless and dauntless can freely get into it without having to go through a simulation. That would be pretty neat. So now Tris has time to tell Christina about what happened after Christina got injured in the stairway. Christina gets pretty confused about the simulation because they've never heard about any simulation that works on somebody without having to be injected into them. Even the transmitters were still injected into their body. They don't really have ways to get answers to that right now though, so that's just a question to solve another day. And you know, just a little bit later, the day's getting so much better because Uriah comes in carrying Lynn, who is horribly injured, calling for a doctor. He is begging somebody to take care of her, but there is nobody there that can care for her with how bad her injuries are. So unfortunately, we also lose Lynn. Luckily for them, the guards are feeling nice enough to let her and Christina go and say goodbye to Lynn because it's clear that she's going to die. And after everybody kind of settles down from this, Tori comes back in the room and throws Janine's dead body on a table. Now, nobody respected her, but it's kind of a shock when somebody throws a dead body on a table. I mean, it's a real power move. Johanna at this point then walks in, and her and Tori have like a little argument about how she got in the way of stuff, and she's like, no, I got in the way of you killing innocent people. I wasn't gonna let that happen, okay? My word. Tori's like, cool, whatever. We're setting up a new political system, and Amity is gonna be excluded from it since, you know, they're not necessary, apparently. And they'll have no representation there, but of course they're still going to be expected to supply supplies to them. Now, she is visibly furious about this, but just reminds Tori that sometimes the people they oppress become mightier than they would like. This makes something click in Triss's brain, and she starts looking around the room and notices not a single Dauntless member has a gun. And you know who has all the guns? The factionless. She tells Christina about this, but they don't have any time to discuss right now because Evelyn walks in the lobby. Tobias isn't with her, leaving Triss to wonder where he is. But Evelyn's just down here to announce that they are disbanding the faction system. Now, Tori clearly didn't know this was happening and starts arguing with her. But before anything can really happen or blow up, Evelyn calmly points out that the factionless have all the guns. They have all the power right now. There is nothing anybody can do about this. Now, she explains that she really didn't want to have to do it this way, but she knows they're also attached to their faction system, and they will just need a clean break from it. And hopefully this will help ease them into the new era, you know, by gunpoint. Once Tori goes and sits down and accepts that maybe she made a mistake by trusting this woman, Evelyn starts to explain that everybody who helped them defeat Erudite will be rewarded, and the ones who, resisted will be tried and punished accordingly. But now, the door opens once again, and Tobias steps out with Marcus and Caleb following behind him. He comes over towards her and tells her that she was right, and all the screens in the Erudite common room down here light up. Evelyn has no idea what's happening, but this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the information we've been after this entire frickin' book. A woman pops up on the screen named Amanda Ryder, and she is with an organization that is fighting for justice and peace. Aren't they all? Then they show some clips of some pretty gruesome stuff, and the woman comes back to explain that most of the people in those clips were their neighbors. It wasn't some big terrorist group going against the government. It was just by normal people against normal people. Because the battle they're fighting right now, apparently, isn't against an organization, it's against human nature. See, they put all these people in the city here, that is basically shown to be a giant experiment, so they can try to solve violence and cruelty. They're not just leaving this footage behind to let them know that they're in an experiment. No, they're leaving this footage behind so that they know that when there is a large group among them that goes by divergence, the experiment is complete, and they should come out to try to help the rest of the human race. And then Miss Amanda ends this speech saying that she is about to join them. She is volunteering to forget her name, her family, her life before this experiment, and will take on a completely new name with false memories and a false history. And then just to confirm that the information she has given them is correct, she lets them know what her name will be in the experiment. And you want to guess what the last name is? Oh, well, her name is Edith Pryor. Now, if you've forgotten, this is Triss Pryor and this is Caleb Pryor. Yeah, this is their ancestor some way, somehow. Once she's done talking, all the screens go black, she's holding Tobias's hand, and gunfire starts to go off. And that right there is the end of Insurgent. Luckily for you, I decided to put the last 2 books in this video, so let's get talking about the next one. I'm actually gonna go take a break. My voice really hurts right now. I've been talking for too long. This series is kind of all about being your true self, so I figured I would go ahead and dress in my normal uniform of oversized t-shirt and baggy shorts. Wait, baggy t-shirt and shorts. It's the Texas uniform, what can I say? Anyways, you would think getting into Allegiant we would instantly be talking about the gunfire that happened at the very end of the last book, but no, we just catch up with Triss and she's in a jail cell. But just as exciting as the gunfire, we get to learn about her relation to Edith Pryor. Her dad's last name was Pryor. That's where her mom got her last name from, so that's where she got her last name from. But Pryor is an abnegation last name, meaning that her relation to Edith Pryor is from a few generations back. Anyways, once we finally get to the second page of this book, we get caught up on what Evelyn did. Basically the chaos in the Erudite headquarters lobby area calmed down pretty fast, and everything's gone back to normal, well, as normal as you can be while you're restructuring the entire government and disbanding everybody's ways of living life that they're used to. But yeah, things are chill here in a Divergent City. Y'all know Toby Mac, like Diver City. Yeah, I was homeschooled and Christian, so what? Anyways, she's been in the cell for a few days and still hasn't seen Tobias, and speaking of Tobias, this book is for some reason multi-POV. Were the other 2? No, but this one is, which makes my job even more confusing for you. What? This isn't gonna go well. Have we done a multi-POV book here before? No, pretty sure this is the first one. Good luck. So yeah, we're just in Tobias's head now. You'll figure out why that's necessary later in the book. But this would be like reading The Hunger Games and then all of a sudden in Mockingjay Part 2, we get to Peeta's POV. And I'm just like, actually, I wouldn't mind that. But like, it just derails the story a little bit for no necessary reason, it feels like, and I don't like being in his head. I like my girl Triss. I didn't even like her that much, but at least we had a connection for the past couple books. This is just her random boyfriend that is now trying to be more my friend than hers, and I'm like, ooh, no, I don't want to know you that well. You're just her boyfriend, and I'm her friend, and that's our connection there, nothing more. Anyways, Tobias is now coming to meet Triss in the jail cell that she's in, and he's not in one because his mom is Evelyn, the leader of the city right now, so... privileges, nepo baby. He informs us that Evelyn doesn't actually want to follow the instructions in that video and is now locked down the city, so things are going great. But really the main reason he's here is because the trials are going to start soon with all the people who didn't just side with her blindly right away, and there is a decent chance she and some of her friends could be found guilty, and they don't really want that to happen. So, because they're going to be put under truth serum, their main goal is to get Triss to go first, make up this grand elaborate lie that she'll be able to get through the truth serum with, because she is able to fight it off pretty well, but not perfectly. Like, it's still really tempting to tell the truth, but with her super cool Divergent brain, she can get by it. But anyways, for some reason, they're going to trust the Divergent under the truth serum and not test anybody else, so that's their plan, is just to make her have a good enough lie to get Christina and Kara and a couple other people off the hook. And her grand elaborate lie is that she thought Marcus had orders from the factionalists, so that's why she followed him. She didn't have any clue that this mission wasn't approved by Evelyn herself. She's just a girl, she didn't know. And luckily, somehow this plan works and she gets herself off the execution list as well as her besties, and they're all good to go and start living like these new normal lives that is happening in this city right now. And our good buddy Uriah over here is the one to take her to her new dwelling. There's multiple people per dwelling right now, like in one bedroom. It's kind of a mess all over, but she's got a room, she's got a bed. And of course, he's got a little message from Tobias that Tobias wants to meet her tonight in the park at 10 o'clock. Anyways, now back to Tobias's point of view, because again, multi-POV book, welcome to the fun, guys. Tobias is now chatting with Evelyn, and she's kind of questioning his loyalties because she knows that he's the one that released that video to the public. Like, she was gonna keep that on the down low and not tell anybody about it, and they could all just live in the city happily ever after style, but no, because of the Tobias, that can't happen. And it turns out there's actually a little scheme that these two have going on, that he pretended to break up with Triss to try to earn a little bit more of her trust right now. But, that hasn't really worked. During this meeting, though, we do get to learn about the Allegiant. They're the new rebel group that want kind of the factions back, but also want to get out of the city and follow the original plan for this experiment. Because what's a dystopian book without a rebel group? We have to have at least one, okay? And let's just wrap it back to Hunger Games one more time in this video, because that's my favorite thing to talk about. This is why Katniss killed Coin, and that's why Trish probably should have killed her, but, you know, that's her boyfriend's mom, so that would have been a little more awkward. But like this is kind of the situation Coin would have caused, and the fact that they're not really any better off at this point. They're just under another dictator now. Okay, now back to Trish's point of view. And we're in the park now, and they're fighting, again, about how neither of them trust each other. Again, we've heard a version of this fight about 55 times now, and I'm so sick of it. All they've done for the last half of Insurgent and the first bit of this book is fight this same argument about how they don't trust each other, and they always apologize at the end, but they never fix anything. So it never gets better, and they just keep repeating the same fight over and over and over again. It's a cycle that never ends, and I just want them to break up. That's my honest truth. I want them to break up. But why would they do that when they can make out after the fight? Anyways, on to the next day, because that's all they really do in the park that night is fight and make out, and that's all they've done for a freaking book and a half, okay? There was a time jump. I did have a ocean water from Sonic. We're back into Bias's POV. We jump back and forth between POVs so much, I'm gonna stop mentioning it at some point, and I'm just gonna hope y'all keep up. But, here we are for the time being. Anyways, Tobias has heard some stuff about Evelyn talking about a demonstration happening this afternoon, and he doesn't really know what's going on, but it doesn't sound great, and he gets to find out really soon because all of a sudden, there's stuff happening outside. Yet some of the factionalists are out there with the choosing bowls from the choosing ceremony, destroying them. And a lot of the people who still like the idea of factions aren't taking this too well. they're not too happy about this. Edward is the one destroying these bowls, and he's a little off kilter. He's not fully there in the head. Honestly, he gets a little too violent a little too fast, and so when an erudite man tries to rush forward and stop him from destroying these bowls, Edward is the one to not take it so well. And while he's trying to stop this man, he ends up slamming the sledgehammer that he's destroying the bowls with into this man's shoulder. Yeah, everybody hears the bones crack. That right there sends everybody into, let's call it a frenzy. As always with this book, when there starts to be chaos, a gunshot goes off, and then we kind of see the man who attacked Edward on the ground and he looks dead, and then we see Edward on the ground and he also looks pretty much dead. But we're not for sure, but not looking too good. There are also a few other injured people around who may have just caught a stray bullet or got trampled by the crowd because, you know, guns. And this is the moment where Tobias realizes that there is no way he can support his mother because this is not working and she has no control over this situation and clearly doesn't actually care about people. Trish is nearby and she's on the same page as him going, yeah, we gotta get out of here. We have to go. She's not talking about the chaos of this area they're in. She's talking about the city. They need to go find the people who started this whole city experiment thing. When he goes back inside, Evelyn is actually acting all concerned and she's like, oh my goodness, what happened? I didn't think anything bad was gonna happen today, even though he overheard her planning something along these lines. He doesn't let on though that he knows that she planned this. The whole reason she planned this is revealed the next day because she decides they need to make some new rules because it's clear that they can't trust everyone anymore. Your guy smacked somebody with a sledgehammer. Oh, and by the way, he is dead. He's not alive. Goodbye, Edward. Firstly, she's going to start a curfew, so everybody has to be back in their abodes by 9 o'clock. And then they're also going to start learning new jobs. Some jobs the factionless used to do, some jobs the other factions used to do. Everybody's just intermingling with what they might be good at, and they're all just gonna run the routes and see who's the best at it. Trish is having a pretty normal day so far besides the new rules. She has to break up a little fight in the hallway between some factionless and some people that still kind of want to be in their factions, and then she gets a sack thrown over her head and gets kidnapped. So an average day for a girl. Luckily though, these kidnappers are nice and they're just the Allegiant, the new dystopian rebel group that is here to actually help everybody, hopefully. We don't know, maybe they are. they could also be bad. But they're just letting her know they're having a meeting tonight at midnight at the place she made her confession at Candor, and they just want to let her know she's invited, as are a bunch of other people. And they do want to make sure she does invite her other Dauntless friends that may be interested. Because the Allegiant are very busy people. Mind you, her face is covered this whole time. She has no clue who she's talking to, but she's like, alright, I guess I'll be there because I don't like what's going on in this city currently. Maybe this group is good. Not much else happens that day. She does find a little note on her pillow from Tobias. It's gonna be so romantic, right? No, it's just letting her know that her brother's trial is tomorrow. So he's probably gonna die soon because he was like Janine's right-hand man there for a second, at least experiment-wise. Oh, sorry. Also, that Allegiant meeting was the next day. So the next day, she has time to tell Christina and Uriah about it. They're like, of course we're in. We're coming with you to the secret Allegiant meeting. Because they're not going to miss out on a good time, but before they can all actually get to this fun secret meeting, they have to go work their new jobs, or at least test out one of these new jobs. We don't need to get into it. This is not one of our problems in this book. They're all going to be employed for a bit. Luckily, during the job time, though, Uriah has a chance to tell Zeke about this, so he's going to be there as well. And then when they finally all get there, she sees Tobias there. Of course, one of her first questions is how her brother's trial went today. And yeah, this guy's going to be executed. He's not dead yet, but it's scheduled. Tick-tock. Now, she's a little conflicted on how to feel about this because obviously he did kind of try to kill her and had a hand in her almost dying, but also he's her last alive remaining family member, so she's a little bit attached to him. But not like really, because like kind of dead to her already, but being literally dead is a step farther than she's really prepared for. There's nothing she can do about that right now because we have to be introduced to the leaders of the Allegiant, or at least the people who invited them all here. And guess what? It's people we already know, of course. It's actually Kara, who I just never bothered to find a picture for because I liked her stick figure better, and Johanna. These two go over the goals for the Allegiant. One is to overthrow Evelyn and the factionless and all the people who are working with the factionless, and the other one is, of course, to follow the instructions in that video and get out of the city. Kara's the one who's going to be leading the division that is going out of the city, so she wants to take at least a test group out first. So herself, Tobias, Triss, Peter. Peter's also here, by the way, because why wouldn't he be? He's just kind of everywhere. Like, if you think Peter might be in this scene, he's probably in a scene, because even though they all hate him and don't trust him with secret information, he somehow keeps ending up here. But also Zeke and Tori are coming as well. Did I say Christina? Christina's going. They want that core group to go. But turns out Zeke doesn't want to go, though. He has some people that he wants to take care of here, so Uriah volunteers to go in his place. And just like that, it's decided that this little group will all be leaving tomorrow night by train, operated by someone they trust, of course. So, just to go over that again, it's gonna be Kara, Christina, Tobias, Triss, Peter, and Uriah. Oh, and Tori. Sorry, don't forget about Tori. She's very important. After this meeting is all over, they all chit-chat for a bit, but then, of course, our two lovebirds, I guess they're still in love. I don't know. They really seem like they hate each other, but they sneak off and come up with a plan to get Caleb out and take him with them. Yeah, apparently we're saving him now because we want not one, but two insane men who only care about their own personal gain with us. If you don't know who else I'm talking about, of course it's Peter. Okay, look. 1 is a party, 2 is a crowd with these type of men. We don't need 2 of them. But I guess she like kind of cares about her brother or something, but I just, like, if you try to kill me, I don't know if I have it in me to try to save you. I really don't think I do. Jesus right now is just frowning down at me and he's like, oh really? Really? Look what I did. But like, I'm just a girl. Girl, get yourself out of there and leave him behind. What is the attachment? He literally tried to kill you. I guess Peter did too, but he at least kind of made up for it. This guy hasn't. They're the same person in my head. Also, didn't they both play romantic interest with her in different movies? Yeah? No? I know he did, which is really odd. Anyways, the next day, Tobias, with very little effort, gets Caleb out. Some stuff happens after they're out and Caleb tries to run away and then of course ends up getting punched in the face because Tobias really doesn't like this guy that much, but he's saving him for Triss and doesn't know why he would try to run away from him when obviously he's going to catch him, but Caleb did. Gosh, but luckily they meet up with Zeke in the alleyway. He's able to help them out, get Caleb out of there without him trying to run away again. His nose is currently bleeding, but he deserves it, so it's fine. And then Tobias and Zeke have a little moment where they say goodbye. They're like the bestest of buds, but haven't interacted till right now, or in this book, it feels like, because I didn't know they were best friends before this, but they are. So they're having this emotional goodbye, and he's like, take care of my little brother, and Tobias is like, of course, man, I would never let anything happen to him. I would never let a wall blow up in his face. What? After their really nice goodbye, Tobias and Caleb are heading over to the trains. Caleb is still trying to put together what the heck is going on and how he's going to end up dead. And when he sees Triss, he's like, oh, I got it. She's gonna kill me. And she's like, no, I'm not. You're actually coming with us. And then they all hop on a train. And when they're on the train, she gets to tell him that they're going outside the fence. He looks scared, but also realizes this is probably his only chance to live right now, so he's gonna go along with it and not fight back. I'm trying to keep this all as recappy as possible, but on this train ride, they have a short little conversation about Tobias's mentor, Amar, who is actually a Divergent, and he's the one who figured out that Tobias is a Divergent and taught him how to hide his divergence. But anyways, Amar ended up dying because he was a Divergent. And he's just really sad about that and needed to talk about that right now for the first time ever, right this second, for no apparent reason. You definitely won't need to remember that in like 2.0 seconds. Anyways, don't worry about that though. It's not gonna be important at all. You're not gonna need to remember who Amar is. What? But they get to the area where they're gonna jump off the train, so they all do that, and then Caleb tries to run away again, and again it doesn't work. They catch him again. They have him under control again. They meet up with the rest of their people. Tori is walking in front of them, and then Tori gets shot by a gun, so they all have to scatter. Triss panics and ends up crawling towards Tori, and it's very clear Tori is dead. She is no longer with us. Luckily, when Christina ran off, she found a truck and hotwired it, I guess, and now they're all driving away in the truck, away from the gun. Not everybody is there at the start when Triss first gets into the truck, but they do find everybody else. Tori is the only one that died. A couple of them do have little injuries, but they're not that bad. The rest of them make it to Amity safely. When they get there, they're talking to Johanna for a bit, and they're like, hey, since you guys are technically outside the fence already and the closest to the rest of the world, do you guys know anything about what's out there? And she's like, no, because if anybody goes outside our border, we give them the forgetting serum thing so they don't remember anything about what they just saw. Our little group is like, cool, great, we're going into this completely blind, and they don't really have time to discuss that there's a forget me serum situation happening in here because they don't really have time to discuss anything in this book because there's so much going on all the time. So they just get in the truck and they keep on driving. Eventually, once they're past the city border outside the fence, they're met by another truck and this girl hops out and she's like, "Hey, I'm Zoe." And then points to the guy next to her and she's like, "That's Amar." Yeah, his mentor that he thought was dead, like it seemed like he was killed because he was a Divergent, is just here with this girl, Zoe. Tobias doesn't believe this is Amar though, because again, he saw this guy die. Like he went to this guy's funeral. He's pretty sure he's dead. So he's pretty sure Zoe's crazy. Amar steps forward and he's like, "No, it's really me. I'm here. I work for the same organization that Edith Pryor did." And then they hand Triss a photo with her mother in it, surrounded by people that clearly don't live in the city. So now our little group just gets in the car with Zoe and Amar and are being taken back to their base where everybody is just there studying them all the time. So hopefully they'll be told what the heck is happening right now and why there's an experiment going on in this city. Okay, it's getting late and I don't want to disturb my neighbors, so we're gonna turn this off and I'm not gonna have a blue tongue next time I talk. As they're on the way to this compound, they see a sign on the way in that says Bureau of Genetic Welfare. And they're all officially welcome to what they lovingly call the compound. That is set in what used to be O'Hare Airport. Now our people from the city don't even know what an airplane is. They don't think there's a way to fly in the sky as a human. So they're really confused about what an airport is. And when they're explained what planes are, mind blown. After the big discovery of airplanes, they're taken inside to meet David, who is the person that runs this compound, and lets them know that they've been waiting for them here since the very beginning. I haven't mentioned the movies in a while because I just don't think we should talk about them, but I do need to mention my biggest pet peeve is that if you just watch the movies, and I don't know why you did, you would be like one of the 5 people who just watched the movies, but anyways, if you just watch the movies, you're like, "Oh cool, they pulled up to this real futuristic looking compound place thing." No, it's like Hunger Games dystopian vibe. Like that's the type of vibe that is here. There's not super crazy futuristic tech besides the serum here. I think the only reason the movies went that futuristic is to try to not make it look too much like District 13 from the Hunger Games, but it just made the movie feel that much tackier, and this book can't afford to be that much tackier, okay? The movie adaptations have their flaws in a lot of ways, but this is one of the biggest flaws. Oh, also, no, I take that back. The biggest flaw in the movies is that they make Triss look like a dumbass the entire time, when it's normally this guy right here that's the idiot. She normally has good ideas and thinks with her head. Yes, I know I make fun of her, but she's not as dumb as they make her in the movie. They give her a lobotomy in the movie, I swear. And then they give all the brains to this guy, who doesn't make one single good decision in the book. Anyways, David over here is the leader of the Bureau of Genetic Welfare, or at least this compound of it. And the first thing he lets them know is that Edith Pryor really only gave our group, the partial truth. He starts off by simply talking about the United States, and they're all like, "The United what? What the heck is that? The United States?" We move on from the concept of the big giant country pretty fast because we just need to focus on what the big giant country did, which is the fact that they wanted to get rid of undesirable traits and personality types from humans, which led to them experimenting on ways to get rid of personality types like violence and bad things like that. But this all led to a purity war that eliminated over half the population. It went super well. Obviously, after the Purity War, people wanted to fix the genetic mess-ups they had made because, again, they tried to get rid of these traits, which made people lack certain good traits when they got rid of the bad traits. So that's where the Bureau of Genetic Welfare came in, because now they're trying to get everybody back to being genetically pure, as they would call it. And it turns out the people who are genetically pure in the experiments are the Divergents. They're the ones who have all the traits that you and I normally have, and they didn't try to get rid of like their violence or their empathy or something like that. We also find out that their city is actually one of the more successful experiments because they're the first city that had the factions introduced to them. They started with the factions. The factions actually went so well in the city that they implemented it in the other experiments across the United States. Yeah, the other experiments. There's other cities where people just don't know there's an outside world. Their goal with all these experiments were really to make the leaders value divergence. They didn't think that they would go on and try to kill divergence because they didn't want to meet the rest of the world. It's a lot for a little group to take in, but they also have to take in that all of them who aren't divergents are technically in the Bureau's terms, genetically damaged. There's something not right with them. Me too. The Bureau does understand, though, this is a lot to process right now, so they're like, hey, let us get you to your rooms, you can all kind of process, chill out there for a little bit, and then we'll talk more later, okay? But Tris is like, no, I want to circle back to something. It seems like you know a whole lot about us, and you mentioned something about observing us, so can we talk about that? What do you mean you've been observing us? Because, yeah, they mentioned observing them. And luckily for them, they've been having this conversation inside the compound's control room, so then all the computer screens turn on with a bunch of different camera angles of just all over the city. Yeah, it turns out it wasn't just the Dauntless that was observing those security cameras. It was the guys that they didn't even know existed until right this second. Now, if you're confused, imagine how confused our little group is. Well, they're very confused. So, most of them are taken back to the room, besides Tris. She decides she wants to stay and talk to David for a little bit because in the photo she got of her mom, David is standing right beside her mom, and she's like, hey, what did you know about her? And what is her connection to all of this? And it turns out her mother is actually one of these people. And this is from a trip she took outside of the city to reconnect with them for just a little bit before she never saw them ever again. Her mother was actually put in the city to solve a problem that was happening with the experiment. Her mother knew the entire truth this whole time and knew about this whole big world outside and knew about the Bureau of Genetic Welfare and all that stuff and never told anybody, apparently. And she's starting to get a little upset because these people knew her mother and they just watched her suffer and die and did nothing about it. And so now that Tris can truly have her own existential crisis now, she's taken to the room with everybody else who is also having existential crises. Nobody is mentally well in this room anymore. They've mostly just been told they're genetically damaged and that the whole world they thought was real was this big giant experiment, and there's a whole big world outside of here. And they're also not the only experiment. There's more of those. They're not even special. It'd be like waking up one day and being like, oh, I'm a lab rat. And there's a million other lab rats. No one cares about me. But now let's get back over to Tobias's point of view. He wakes up in the middle of the night that night when everybody else is asleep and ends up getting to chit-chat with his good friend Amar. And he's like, hey, so how are you alive? And Amar explains that they ended up having to fake his death because they caught on that he was Divergent and they were pretty sure people were gonna kill him and they needed to get him out of the experiment. And they actually ended up doing that for a few other Divergents as well. Now, obviously, one of those people was not Tris's mom, who was also Divergent, by the way, which we already knew that. We already went over this. Anyways, her mom, if you forgot, was a Divergent. Obviously, they didn't try to get her out of the city. They didn't think she was in that much danger, even though they knew the whole plot to kill a bunch of abnegation, but whatever. But one of the people who is alive is Tori's brother, who Tori thought she was dead and died thinking that her brother was dead when he's actually alive, and she was just like minutes away from seeing him again. Oh, that's depressing. Yeah, it turns out George, her brother, is still alive. He's just on patrol right now, and that's why they haven't seen him yet. Amar and Tobias end up talking a little more, and Amar just informs him that Tobias's father, Marcus's trial is tomorrow, meaning that most likely his father is going to die very soon. Now we're back to Tris's point of view. When she wakes up, Tobias is asleep, but he has his shoes on. Yeah, this freak sleeps with his shoes on. I don't care how tired you are. You don't fall asleep with your shoes on. Anyways, Tris wakes up, goes out of that room, and goes to stand in the main area and stare at this giant slab of artwork. It's literally just like a granite slab over there with water dripping on it slowly but surely, consistently dripping, and then there's water pooling at the bottom, and it's slowly eroding the rock at the top, and it's supposed to represent that even little changes over time, if they're consistent, can still make a difference. Now, Tris doesn't figure this out on her own. Zoe is actually the one that comes over to explain all this to her, so Zoe is back in the picture. Now, why don't I have a photo of Zoe? Couldn't find one, and I wanted to draw another stick figure. Oh no, was this uncapped all night? She's dead! So you see Zoe. She's here now. She explained the rock slab water fountain thing. But Zoe didn't just come here to explain the rock slab to her. She came here to take Tris back to David so he could give her a tablet that has a bunch of letters that her mother sent back to the Bureau on it. Basically kind of her mom's journal. They are nice enough to give her a slight overview of her mother's life before they just give her this journal because it doesn't cover everything. Turns out her mother grew up in the Fringe, which is kind of like the seam of this world if we're thinking in Hunger Games term, or like the bad area of this world. It's not too pretty. But the Bureau of Genetic Welfare eventually found her, and at 16 they decided they needed to send somebody into the experiment, and she's like, I want to go into the experiment. So they put some memory serum and some people implanted some fake memories in them and then put her in Dauntless. And then they had plans for her after she was able to choose her own faction. And then they had plans for her after the choosing ceremony, which we'll get into with the letters. Finally, I get to explain why Pennywise is here. See, the guy who played Matthew in the movies is just Pennywise in the Pennywise It movies, and I thought it was funnier to have this photo, and I really hope none of y'all are scared of clowns. I'm sorry. Why we're talking about Matthew is that after David is done talking of Tris, Matthew comes over and he's like, hey, I'm Matthew, I play Pennywise in the It movies, I'm pretty like famous. No, but anyways, he comes over and he's like, hey, we've kind of talked here and there. He's been in the background of a couple of these scenes. She knows of his existence, but they haven't really talked till now. He just comes over with a really casual question for her and he's like, hey, can I test your genetics and Tobias's genetics, because I'm just kind of curious on what they look like. Tris isn't fazed by this at all. She's like, yeah, sure, you can test my genetics. I'm not too sure about Tobias. I'll have to talk to him, but we can meet you back here at say, a time, an hour from now. So off she goes to catch up with Tobias. He's like, sure, this random man can test my genetics too. Why not? Everybody's been testing my genetics for who knows how long at this point. So what's the problem with this random Matthew Pennywise guy doing it himself? So they agree to that, but then before they get there, they get to chit chat with George and break poor George's heart, because they say, hey George, your sister was gonna be here, but she's not alive anymore. Sorry about that, buddy. And he's just like a little bit heartbroken, you know? Anyways, back to happier subjects. Let's go to the lab with Tobias, Tris, Matthew, and our new friend Nita, who actually comes from one of the failed experiments in Indianapolis. After some introductions, they get busy drawing their blood, and then they give it to this little machine that will be able to tell them more about their divergence or if they're genetically damaged. And honestly, one of the main reasons Matthew wanted Tobias here is because he's really curious if Tobias is actually divergent or if he's just able to resist serums, because he doesn't share a lot of the other traits that a lot of people with divergence have. They wait the hour it takes for this machine to analyze their samples, and it turns out Tobias isn't a divergent at all. He just has simulation awareness, so he is technically genetically damaged. Tobias is now trying to wrap his head around the fact that he isn't divergent, and this means he's genetically damaged and something is wrong with him. Meanwhile, Tris is like, hey, this changes nothing about you. You're still the same person you were before we figured this out. And somehow this conversation where Tris is being really sweet and supportive of him and she's like, hey, you're fine, you're still the same person, blows up into this big argument and he ends up walking out of the room. Our new friend Nita ends up being the one to catch up with him, and she's like, hey, if you want to learn more about being genetically damaged, meet me back here at 9 o'clock tonight, and don't bring Tris because she just won't understand because she's genetically pure. Now y'all, if somebody ever tells you to not tell your girlfriend about meeting up with somebody else later in the evening because they won't understand, don't listen to them. They have bad intentions. But again, like we discussed earlier, Tobias is an idiot in the books. Back to Tris's point of view, she's upset about Tobias and wants to be able to comfort him, but then they're told they're gonna be able to go on a plane ride today, so she's super excited about that. Now, of course, Tobias does not come on this plane ride because he does not like heights. But the rest of our little crew have a wonderful time on their plane ride excursion of the day. Well, besides the fact that it does cause another minor existential crisis for some of them because they realize just how small they are in the big scheme of the world. But you know, we all go through that every once in a while, so who can blame them? After all that excitement, she gets to finally settle down and read from her mother's journal entries for the first time. Her mom's journal starts off with her backstory. It's about how her mother's mom killed her own dad, and this caused her mom to end up running away from that situation because it was just too much to handle. Then she lived in the fringe for a while, then the Bureau of Genetic Welfare found her, and then she was like, hey, I'm going in the experiment now. And that's about all we learned from there, all the stuff we already knew. Now cut back over to Tobias's POV. He is now meeting up with Nita, and she's like, okay, we're gonna go to the basement to meet up with all the GDs. That's what we call the genetically damaged. Doesn't stand for anything else. Because you see, even in this place, the genetically pure, the GPs, get all the higher ranking jobs, and there's only so far a GD can actually move up in the world, so most of them end up working more the like service industry type jobs and stuff like that. But before they can get to that, somebody shouts out about Marcus's trial, so everybody goes running into the control room to see the results of that. And it turns out Evelyn doesn't actually order to execute him, she just orders Marcus to exile, and they're going to send him outside of the fence and he will not be allowed back in. Okay, now just, I need you to bear with me for the next little bit because the book ends up cutting back and forth between their POV so much in the next little bit, you kind of end up with whiplash. I feel like we're already there, but We cut right over to Trish's point of view. We do not have time to process his emotions right now. And it's the next day now. We don't really get to learn anything else about the GDs that evening or anything from Nita's plan. We just learned that bare minimum. But anyways, Trish and Tobias are talking again, so what do you think is happening? That's right, they're fighting! It's this whole fight about how they don't understand each other, but they're still really good for each other and they still make a really good couple, right guys? No! No, you don't! Break up! But no, they agree that they should never ever break up, and I die a little more inside. And now we get back to Natalie's journal, not my journal. Her mom's name is Natalie. It's a very confusing time on this channel and in my life, okay? I always forget that her mom is named Natalie until I start watching the movie or reading the book again, and I'm like, whoa, jump scare! I don't like seeing my name in books. I don't know if y'all feel the same way. I feel like some people get really excited and they're like, well, that's my name, and I'm like, leave me out of this. I am not a part of this. So here's where we finally learn why Natalie was sent in there. This is around the time where a lot of that Divergent started getting kind of cut off from life. And the leader of the Bureau at the time saw it a waste of their best genetic material. Yeah, you see, the Bureau doesn't really think of the people in the experiments as people. They just kind of think of them as good genes and bad genes. The big twist is here that yes, her mother started out with Dauntless, and this is because she had tattoos, and there was no way to really explain why a kid in any of her faction would have tattoos, but she was only supposed to start there and then move to be an erudite. Yeah, not an abnegation, which is where she ended up, because you see, she didn't want to be an erudite. But Natalie at this point isn't for sure about what she's doing, so in the journal she's like, I might choose another faction, I don't know, but we all know she ends up choosing abnegation. And after we discover all this, she doesn't want to read anymore because she can kiss Tobias. I guess why not? They finish making out, and then she goes back to reading the journal, and this time it's Natalie being like, I'm so sorry, David, I have to choose what's best for me and my boo. Because she was already dating Trish's father at the time. And then her next journal entry, she's mad at David because David didn't like her decision. And guys, I'm getting a little confused. Because this book is making it sound like David was in charge of everything at this point, but David would have also been a teenager. Like, he's right around her mom's age. And it's kind of implied that David had a crush on her mom, so if he wasn't a teenager and was an old dude this time, it's really creepy. But like, I'm pretty sure the book means for him to be a teenager. But it just, he would only be like 16, 18 at most. I don't think he's running the Bureau at this point. And then the next journal entry, Natalie is apologizing to David, and she's like, I understand why you can't receive my journal entries anymore, which even further implies that he admitted that he had some kind of crush on her and wasn't happy reading about her happy relationship with Andrew. So I don't know if I missed something in the book and maybe he wasn't as high up as I thought, but like, it kind of sounded like he was in charge of the Bureau at this point, and now I'm confused. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But luckily for us, there's a lot of blank spaces in her mother's story because, again, they're just like slight journal entries, and it wasn't like her mother was writing in this journal every day. So she decides to go talk to her BFF now, Zoe. Zoe and her have barely talked, but she figures Zoe might know some more stuff about her mom, maybe, who knows? And it turns out that Zoe actually knows how her parents met. Andrew wasn't doing well in some of his classes, so Natalie offered to help him in that regard, and that's how they ended up secretly meeting a lot so she could help him out with his classwork, even though he was an erudite, if we all remember that. Andrew really didn't like erudite, as we already knew, so he really wanted to leave there at the time, and Natalie was like, why not? I really like this Andrew guy. So they decided to go to abnegation together because she still thought she could carry out her plan from there. And this all somehow leads to Zoe talking about how the genetically damaged poisons the minds of even those in leadership in the factions, and this confuses Trish because if somebody was poisoned in leadership in the abnegation faction, that person was Marcus, and Marcus, as we've discussed, is Divergent. So why are we blaming all these bad traits on just the GDs when Divergents seem to have this same problem, or GPs have these same problems? This is the first she really starts to think about it this way. Zoe, though, just kind of brushes this off and then takes her over to Matthew, and when Zoe leaves, Matthew is like, oh gosh, some of these people just blame GDs for everything, man, and it's really stupid. Because you can't just know everything about a person by looking at their genes. Common frickin' sense from Matthew over here, and we love to hear it. And then he's really sweet and gives her a human biology book so she can maybe understand humans a little better, because her world just blew up by like 2 bajillion times the size at this point. Like, she lived in a little city and now she's in this whole big world. So he's like, maybe if you understand like the basics of humans, it will help ground your brain a little. And it's so sweet. What if she dates Matthew, guys? I don't know how old he is. Never mind. Don't take that as an actual consideration. But like, her boyfriend's been really mean to her this entire time. And she's been pretty mean to her boyfriend, to be fair. Like, they're so bad for each other. After this, she goes back to their dormitory and Caleb ends up being the only one there, and she decides to go ahead and give Caleb the tablet with their mother's journal entries on it because she's finished everything in there. Like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of information we didn't already know, but she figures Caleb is also Natalie's son and should be given a chance to read over this. And in a very blunt fashion, she's like, yeah, so our mom actually lived here and she came from the fringe, and then here are some files about how she got to the city, so enjoy. And Caleb's like, what? And then recovers from that a little, and he's like, I actually have something I want to show you related to Edith Pryor. And takes her to the record room where they keep all the experiment data. Turns out Edith Pryor, aka Amanda Ritter, used to work for the government at the time before she went into the experiment. The first thing he shows her is the consent form that this woman signed to go into the experiment, and then it turns out that this woman, even though she has an abnegation name, was an erudite. And it turns out that's where most of their lineage is from because, again, all the data is in here. There's a few exceptions, some are in abnegation and other factions, but most of them come from erudite. Tris gets pretty pissed off, though, at all this because she feels like he's trying to use this as an excuse for what he did because, you know, faction before blood. And he's like, look, our whole family was erudite, so what I did wasn't that bad. Now, he didn't say that, but it felt like that's what he said to her. So she storms off, finds Tobias, and guess what they end up doing? Not fighting, no, it's the other thing. Yeah, making out. Because remember, kids, if you can't talk without fighting, might as well just make out instead. That night, we're back in Tobias's point of view. He has a note under his pillow from Nina over here, and she's like, hey, meet me outside the hotel entrance at 11. Don't do that! You have a girlfriend! But no, he goes to do that because there's like a hotel connected with the O'Hare airport apparently. I don't know, but he's meeting her outside the hotel at 11 o'clock at night. Of course, he goes out to meet with her and they go into the little experiment data room with the whole family tree situation in there, blah, blah, blah. And she starts explaining a little bit more of her plan or her mission goal. Basically, she doesn't like how the Bureau is treating GDs as if they're expendable in ways, especially when they're putting all sorts of GDs in the experiment to die in there without knowing their actual lives or what the actual world is like. And right now, she just wants to offer him an opportunity to see the real world outside of this compound. He's smart enough to know that this girl probably wants something in return, and she does, but all it is just his protection because they're gonna be going into a dangerous area, and he's like, okay, sure, whatever. And again, she pulls the card of, you can't tell Tris anything because she's a GP. She won't understand, and it will also put her in danger if you tell her. Meanwhile, Tris has been in danger for the last 1.5 years of her life. But he agrees to that. So these two just go on their merry way through a secret tunnel to a truck that has been set out there for them so they can drive over to the fringe so they can talk with some people out there. Basically, the fringe is a bunch of GD people who live out here because the government treats GDs so bad they would rather live in a wasteland than in an actual city. Like, there's plenty of actual cities in the world, but it's just the class system is real bad, and they don't even really treat it as an actual class system. They're like, no, we don't treat GDs any differently, but they do. They get to the fringe, they're walking through, and really her main mission is to talk to a guy named Rafi that lives. Rafi knows her pretty well, so once they get to the house, they're invited in, then they meet this other girl named Mary that's there as well, and they're very interested to find out that Tobias is from the experiment. And that's because Mary and Rafi over here lead the Midwest branch of the GD Rebellion. Of course, there's another rebellion. There's 2 rebellion groups that we know of right now. One in the city, one outside the city. Rafi and Mary would like to call themselves an uprising, not a rebellion, an uprising, okay? And after learning the bare minimum that there's a GD uprising, apparently, he's kicked out of the room so the adults can talk. It's under the guise that they need him to watch out for them outside, but there's already a bodyguard outside. He doesn't need to be there. It's clear they just don't fully trust him yet. He does take the opportunity to talk to the guard out here, and he's like, why do people choose to live here if there is protection in the city? And the guard explains that people choose to live here because if you die here, at least somebody cares. If you die in the city, nobody will. Him and this random guard talk a little more. Eventually, Nita comes back outside, and they start heading back to the Bureau. On their way back, she's explaining that she really just brought him there because she wanted Mary and Rafi to be able to put a face to the people that are part of the experiment, and also wanted him to be able to see what the outside world is like. And she trusts Rafi a whole lot because Rafi is the one who radicalized her. See, the Bureau claims that there was this golden age of humanity before genetically damaged people existed, before the government made them exist because they tried to get rid of bad traits. It doesn't make sense how they're explaining this, but they're claiming that there were no wars or anything before people were genetically damaged. And turns out that Rafi over here had some pictures of wars that happened when people weren't genetically damaged in the way by the government. And that made her think, what's the difference really if evil happens whether people are GP or GDs? Why are they forcing people to live in experiments without their consent, without their knowledge that they're in an experiment? And is even more fed up because the government doesn't choose to work against crime or poverty or anything like that. No, they choose to work against genetic damage. So yeah, he just got a lot of new information. And when he gets back to the base, he sees Triss asleep on her bed. And he realizes that Triss doesn't need protecting. And he decides right then and there that he is going to tell Triss all about everything he just learned. I'm so proud of you. You're finally making a smart decision. Look at him go, guys. The next day, Tobias and Triss conveniently find themselves alone in the room that everybody's staying in, so he takes this time to tell her that he got a note from Nita under his pillow. And of course, this girl is pretty ticked off about this at first. But he's like, hey, calm down, please, it's all fine. She promised to show me some evidence tonight, and I want you to come along, even though you weren't initially invited. But I want you to. Now, of course, she also wants to see this evidence that GDs and GPs aren't that difference that Nita has, apparently, so she's like, okay, fine, I'll come. Now let's get to that night when they meet up with Nita. At first, Nita is not too happy to see Triss because she told Tobias not to bring Triss, but Triss is here, so she has to get over it. And she's like, fine, I'll still show you that secret photo evidence I have. So she takes them to the lab where her friend Reggie is there with the slides to show them the proof of the old wars that happened before GDs ever existed. So yeah, now there's definitive proof to them, like photo evidence to them, that wars happened before GDs existed. Like, the GPs weren't these perfect, amazing humans. They were just like humans like you or me, and they're trying to make excuses that GDs are damaged even more than they are, when I really don't know if they are. But even with these photos, Triss doesn't fully trust Nita. She believes the photos. She doesn't think they photoshopped them or anything like that, but she doesn't have a good vibe about Nita. But then it's revealed that Janine didn't actually make the advanced simulation serums that controlled Dauntless to kill all of Abnegation. No, that was the Bureau. The Bureau did that. Now Triss is like, that doesn't make any sense. They're trying to protect the Divergents. Why would they kill a faction that has a high population of Divergents? But the only reason Erudite attacked Abnegation is because they thought Abnegation had the highest percentage of Divergence, but we all know that the factionless actually have the highest percentage of Divergence. So the Bureau just decided they could take that loss? Triss still doesn't believe this though, because she thinks this is absolutely insane, especially when people in the Bureau knew people in Abnegation. They wouldn't want this much loss, right? But Nita pulls out proof of the serum at the Bureau, and they wouldn't have gotten that from inside the simulation. Or from inside the experiment. If they have the simulation serum, that means they made it. And see, they didn't just sacrifice Abnegation for no reason. No, they also didn't think there were enough Divergents yet, and they didn't want to sacrifice the experiment yet. So that's why they let Janine do it, or gave Janine the tools to do that. Because to them, losing the lives of many, many Abnegation people, or just people in general, was worth it to not have the experiment fail and be over. Because this is the main experiment that keeps getting funding to the Bureau, because the other ones haven't been this successful. And this all further proves that the Bureau cares more about these experiments than GD lives. This experiment is the one that's doing the best. The government has actually tried to shut down the experiments as a whole and this Bureau as a whole for a while now, but David keeps getting by with proof that it's working from this one experiment in Chicago. And he always fixes the big problems just in the nick of time before funding gets shut down. And even if something went really wrong, they have a plan where they could get a memory serum that would infect the entire population of the people in Chicago, so they could reset the experiment, erasing every single memory the people that lived in Chicago had, so they could keep the experiment going. Basically, killing everybody in there and just letting their bodies still exist without any of the memories of their family, their friends, or any of their past life. Again, this is just a what if they had to do it someday to reset the experiment, but think about how the experiment is going right now. Think about that. Tobias, knowing all this, is now in on striking the Bureau as hard as possible whenever possible, because he does not like them and he views them as the enemy now. So he asks, what's the plan? Nita is going to let some of her friends from the Fringe in through the secret tunnels so they can break in and work together to steal the memory serum from the Bureau so they can't use it on the people in the city, because currently they're pretty sure David is planning on resetting everybody's memories in there because, again, the experiment needs a reset. And when they ask what they're going to do with the memory serum after that, they just say they're going to destroy it, but Tris doesn't really believe that. Nita assures them that this is the only plan though, but it just feels like this is just the start of a plan and not the whole plan. An actual uprising is going to be a very long race, so how are they eventually going to take over? They can't just steal the memory serum, they can probably recreate that at some point at the Bureau. So what else do they have up their sleeve? But when she asks Tobias if he's in, he's like, yeah, and Tris is like, what? What? Just gives him the biggest side eye, because what do you mean you're in? You don't really know these people and you know the bare bones of their plan and you barely know what they stand for. Yes, what they stand for sounds good, but we just got roped up with another messed up rebellion group because of somebody right here. And he wants to do it again already. Tris obviously doesn't agree to this plan, so when they leave this meeting, Tris is fuming, obviously so they talk about it, and Tobias really doesn't want to listen to any of her valid critiques because he's like, well, you're just critiquing her and you just don't trust her because you're jealous of her. Now, Nita is a very pretty girl, yes, but my word, Tobias, use your brain. Is the thing in your head? Use it! He doesn't really understand why she wouldn't want to fight back when they're trying to fight against the people who murdered her parents. They're the ones who gave them the serums to kill abnegation, the serums that ended up having Dauntless members kill her parents. Like you would think, this leads into another big fight where they both just blow up, start fighting, arguing, yelling about how they both can't trust each other at this point. And again, nothing really comes of it, and they just both split off from each other, but they don't break up, they just they split apart, go their separate ways, but not in that way. I wish. And then she runs into her favorite person, Caleb. He can tell she's pissed off, but she's not gonna talk to him about it. And this man, seeing that his sister is ticked, decides maybe I can get her to understand me now. And he's like, so sometimes Janine can be pretty persuasive, and then he gets punched in the face and she starts beating her brother up. It's so bad. Guards have to come over to get her off of him. She is done, and he just became a human punching bag. But they get broken up, no punishments are really doned out because they all know what Caleb did to her in the experiment. They're like, cool, we'll take them to the infirmary hospital wing now. Cool. Don't beat us up. Anyways, moving on to the next day, she's chit-chatting with Matthew over here. She's kind of hinting about all this GD, GP stuff, trying to see if maybe he knows about any of these rebel uprising plans, anything like that. And it turns out he actually gave information to Nita at one point and knows about these rebellion plans, but when he learned more about them, he backed off and separated himself from them because he didn't feel like they were the right way to go. You see, he learned that Nita and her people, they don't want the memory serum, they want the death serum. What? So that's like you want one thing that's pretty chill and chill to steal, and then you want another thing that's not chill. Because if she gets that death serum, she's probably gonna kill a lot of people with it, a lot of GPs that don't even really spread the hate towards GDs. She's just gonna kill them because they're GPs, and that's not what we need to do right now. So anyways, they're like, hey, we should probably go to David's office to warn him about this. Because if this plan works and she gets the death serum and they start killing a whole bunch of GPs, it could start a war between all the GDs and all the GPs, and things can get really messy from there. So they're on their way to David's office, they see Uriah on the way, and then they see the wall behind Uriah explode. Metal spraying everywhere, his limp body is flying backward, Tris gets hit with some stuff, nobody's having a good time currently. People are calling out for other people to signal the alarms, but the alarms aren't working. See, our tech bro Tobias over here was being recruited to turn off said alarms whenever this attack was going to happen. Now, they didn't think the attack was happening this soon, or else they probably would have rushed over to David's office, but here we are. Now, Matthew understands that this bomb going off here means that the people who need to be in the compound to steal the death serum are already here, so him and Tris take off to go deal with that. Meanwhile, Uriah doesn't look too good. Like, he's not moving, but we got some other things to take care of right now. So they're running to the lab with the death serum, all that important stuff, and when they get there, they see David on his knees in front of people who are holding guns, demanding that he tells them the passcode. And it's very obvious that one of those people, even with a mask on, is Nita. Now, this man is not budging. He's not giving them the passcode, and it doesn't seem like they want to just kill him to get in or just blow up the door. She doesn't really know why, but they're not doing it that way. And he's like, you're not actually gonna shoot me. Then they shoot him in the foot and he's like, oh my gosh, that hurt, but I'm still not telling you the passcode. Tris tells Matthew to go get help, so he runs off, leaving Tris alone to deal with all of this as she just watches this unfold and figures out what to do. He keeps telling them no, so they're like, okay, so David, we made this really cool serum that is like a mix of the fear serum and truth serum, and now you're gonna tell us the passcode. They give that to him. Reminder, he's a GP as well. He's Divergent. He also has serum resistance, so he can resist the truth serum, and all he's saying about the passcode is the name. And then David over here, not being helpful, as he's mumbling the name and all this stuff, says her and points directly at Tris. This starts a whole series of events where Tris has to shoot a gun at people, it hits some people, nobody dies. She gets David under her control somehow and starts backing up with him with a gun aimed at his head, and she's like telling them that if they fire at her, she will shoot David because she knows they need that information from him and they don't want him dead, clearly. Nita's whole little group is pretty confused though because they thought she was like a follower of David's and believed all the stuff he was spouting on about. She's like, no, I don't care if he lives or dies, but I'm not letting you get control of the death serum. Meanwhile, she's making it all the way to the end of the hall before one of them calls her bluff and shoots her in the arm. Luckily hitting nothing vital because it's the arm. Even though it is only the arm, it wasn't gonna be good if she was left alone for a while longer, but luckily at this point Matthew shows up with backup and they get everything wrapped up a little bit here and get the compound back under control. Next time we meet up with Trish, she's in the hospital getting a few things attended to, but honestly, she's not that beat up. She's gonna be just fine. Unfortunately though, Uriah is in a room with the door closed, which is never a good sign. David, meanwhile, is injured and maybe paralyzed for the rest of his life, but he's gonna be okay. She's let go. She finds Christina in the waiting room. Christina has been trying to find out more information about Uriah, but they're not telling her anything right now. And then just lets Tris know that Tobias was arrested and is with the rest of the people that were arrested in this one little area. So Tris goes off to talk to him because she's got some choice words. But now we cut over to Tobias's point of view and he's sitting with the other rebels feeling sick to his stomach. He didn't realize this was their plan. He just got manipulated by them and used for another rebel plot he didn't even truly agree with. But the people around him are assuring him that everything's gonna be fine for him. The rest of the rebels are gonna take the fall for this and he should get off with basically just a warning, which is insane. This is really when it clicks for him that he was lied to. He didn't know the actual plan, which, like, good job, buddy, you figured it out. Tris knew that from the very start, but you didn't listen to her once again. Trish then shows up under the guise that she's just there to give them an update on David. She tells them that he's gonna make a full recovery, but may be paralyzed. Then she gets the rest of them to let her talk to Tobias alone and starts explaining everything to him, how his friends were actually after the death serum, not the memory serum, and they were planning to kill a whole lot of people and probably start a war. Then goes down the path of the fact that he doesn't listen to her even when she's been right about so much stuff, and finally reveals that Uriah got hurt and they don't know if he's ever going to wake up again. And of course he starts thinking about how he promised Zeke, Uriah's older brother, that he would take care of Uriah. He would make sure Uriah was just fine, and now he is part of the reason Uriah is injured and may never wake up again. She heads out after this, telling him that she doesn't even know she'll ever be able to look at him again. She heads out now because she said her piece, but lets him know that she doesn't know if she'll ever be able to look at him the same way again. He's having to process all that, but eventually gets taken into an interrogation room and just gets let off with parole, basically. Like, there's no jail time or anything. He's just gonna be watched more closely and isn't allowed in some high security areas anymore. Oh, also, this is all only for a year. He'll be fine after that. He can live his normal life. Part of this is because they don't feel like GDs have the same brain power as GPs, and so they're like, oh, they just don't really understand what they did. But they do. They do. It's not that different. The GPs are really annoying. We don't like them, okay? This also kind of explains why when Nita is released, she's not going to be executed. They're just going to put her in prison for life. Because again, they don't really hold them to the same standards as everybody else. And I also don't think execution is as big of a thing out here as it is within the Chicago City Divergent world. Okay. Now we catch back up with Tris, and we learn that Uriah's condition, like we already know, really isn't that good, but there is a chance he may wake up again. We just don't really know at this point in time. Trish is talking to Kara a little later, and it's clear that Kara doesn't really understand why anybody would attack the Bureau. So Trish has to explain that the Bureau are the people who gave the serum that killed a lot of abnegation to Janine, or that let Dauntless be mind controlled to kill a lot of abnegation to Janine. So they're not innocent in this, so they need to stay here and do something about it, but this wasn't the way to do that. Now let's cut back over to Tobias. Now he doesn't have the courage to face everybody in the dorm room they're all staying in yet, so he's just kind of wandering around the control room where all the screens are showing the different camera angles of the city, and then he noticed that Marcus is still in the city. He never left. He's hiding out in there. And Marcus is currently talking to Johanna, who is confronting him about how he treated his family. But Marcus is trying to weasel his way back into running another rebellion. And he's able to do that pretty well. Basically, he's able to convince Johanna that they need him as part of the Allegiant because he's going to be the one that can get control over people and will be able to lead them into taking over some of the factionless safe houses and getting some of the places where they have all their weapons and stuff like that, so they can start getting a little more control over the city again, and it won't all just be under her control. And after he promises to try to limit the destruction as much as possible, she allows him in, which is a horrible idea. It's like playing with fire, but okay, Johanna. And now we cut over to Evelyn crying in her room because there's no sign of Marcus, meaning there's no proof that he actually left the city, and she just wants him gone. This man is somebody who abused her for years. She is beat down. She wants him gone. Yes, she has her own evils, but she's also still a person who is just making a lot of mistakes right now. Moving on from all that family drama, let's cut back over to Tris, who is now meeting with David the next day in his office, and he's like, hey, I want to offer you an opportunity to start training to be one of my advisors. Because after this whole attack thing happened, he knows he's going to need to make a stronger stand for his cause. Really, all this is going to be is her attending the meetings, learning the in and outs of the compounds, their values, stuff like that. Pretty basic stuff to be somebody's advisor. But the reason he can't allow her to be a part of the official council, basically an official advisor, is because she's only 16. Now, obviously, she doesn't like David at all. He's kind of the reason her parents are both dead right now, but she knows that she can probably use all this information to come up with a better plan to overthrow the Bureau of Genetic Welfare. So of course, she agrees to this because she's smart, unlike somebody. They both agree that she's gonna join the meetings and stuff like that and start training to be a council member, and he's like, okay, great. First thing I want you to do is join the patrol tomorrow that is going out to the Fringe to kind of see what the Fringe is like and see where your mother came from. And she's like, okay, cool, great. So she starts walking out, and then David is like, whoa, I just want you to be aware, even though I had a lot of interesting serums in me, I heard what you said. And she's like, oh crap, this is all a trap. He hates me now and something bad is about to happen. And he's like, no, I'm just really glad you were willing to kill me to protect the lab. That's the things we need. Like, I don't think he truly believes that she actually wants to kill him. He just thinks that she wanted to protect the lab and all the stuff in there. And she's like, oh yeah, that's totally what I was doing. That's it. He's like, cool, great. I'm so glad you did that because I really need somebody that's going to make sacrifices for the greater good. Our girl is the queen of doing that. And then he spills the beans on the reason that they couldn't just blow up the lab. See, if they would have blown up the door to the lab without typing in the passcode and just opening it, a death serum would have sprayed out of it that there's no way to protect yourself against. Like, they could have had big suits on, big hazmat suits on, and they still would have gotten killed by this serum. So that's the reason they couldn't just blow open the door. You have to have the passcode to get into that lab. But she's really wondering, like, how bad can the serum be? And he's like, bad enough that they wouldn't risk going into the lab with an explosion. So anyways, with all those revelations, of course we don't stay with Tris and we go back over to Tobias, who is now talking to Peter in the room. And he's trying to put all these, like, toxic ideas that Tris is, like, manipulating everybody to like her and she has all this power and she doesn't like people who get in front of her power or try to take that away from her, which, like, valid. She's kind of the smartest one here half the time. But Peter really believes she really only likes people if they're under her control. And Tobias is like, no. But in his head, he's kind of like, maybe he's got a point. But no. I still like Tris. They're not officially broken up, but they should be. Like, they should have been broken up for a long time. We all know how I feel about this, okay? I've mentioned this a few times. But, like, after he, basically almost got Uriah killed, I really feel like that would have been my final straw, but not Tris. Luckily, Kara comes running in the room to interrupt this toxic conversation and is like, hey, we need you. We're having a meeting right now. Come along. And this meeting is with GD and GD's sympathizers who want to stop the Bureau from how they're acting and how they keep spreading the ideals that GDs aren't as good as GPs. Kara just assures Tobias that, don't worry, they're gonna be better planners than the last group he fell in with. Just a little bit of shade. He's still like, no, I'm not gonna get involved with this again. And she's like, okay, don't be a freaking idiot, just come along. So once everybody arrives, Triss gets up in the front of the room and she starts going over the plan, which is really right now they just want to find a way to expose them. And is throwing out the idea of maybe doing a widespread truth serum. Someone speaks up to say that GPs can resist truth serum, and somebody else has to speak up and be like, that's not actually true. Triss is just like a really, really strong resistor of serums for some reason. Most GPs would still be affected by it. Yes, everybody believes this, but they are still worried about people resisting. So they come up with the plan that Matthew and Caleb will work together to build a even better truth serum that will work on Divergence, including somebody like Triss. Obviously, Triss will be playing spy, and then Tobias and Christina will go find Reggie, who is the guy that they met out in the Fringe, and try to recruit him into this. Now, Christina obviously doesn't want to work with Tobias. She's pretty mad at him right now, but sucks it up for the better good. After the meeting is finally adjourned, Tobias and Triss, our happy, happy couple, finally get to talk again. And guess what? It's the same freaking fight we've been having for 55 books. It feels like that long at least, because they're going over, once again, how they can't trust each other with emphasis on Tobias right now because of the whole blowing up the wall Uriah debacle. It's also partially because she doesn't know if she's fully ready to forgive him or if she ever will be in this moment, but they're still technically again together at the end of this. And now on to more exciting stuff. We get to go on the little trip to the Fringe with Triss. It's going pretty well for the first bit, and then some stuff happens. There's guns and stuff involved, and then George ends up with a gun pointed at his head, Tori's brother. And this guy is demanding that George tell them where they're taking their people. George is like, we haven't taken anybody, what are you talking about? So Triss at this point has to point her gun at the guy pointing a gun at George and is like, put down your gun or I'll shoot. Then luckily at that point, more of the government people show up and everybody in the Fringe scatters at that point. Amar is in this group and he's trying to point to this being one of the reasons that GDs are a problem. See, this is proof that they only cause the violence. But all Triss can think is, who taught these people to be scared of soldiers then? And now cutting back over to Tobias, we don't get time to sit with anything in this book, okay? It is one chapter, cliffhanger ending, go to the next chapter, never cliffhanger ending, and then we pick up on a completely different topic half the time, I swear. I don't like how this book is written. I feel like you're not gonna like how I'm recapping this because the book is just written in a really weird way where it leaves you like with a little cliffhanger and you want to hear more about these thoughts, but there are none. So, we're back with frickin' Tobias over here, and him and Kara are currently watching the cameras in the control room because the Allegiant are currently attacking Evelyn and the factionalists and everybody who sides with her. It's not the start of a full-out war yet, but they have already started raiding weapon storehouses, stuff like that, and they're gathering supplies to get to that point. So when Triss gets back, they inform her that the Allegiant attacked another storehouse, got more weapons, and it's not just Johanna leading the Allegiant anymore, it's also Marcus. And the people at the Bureau don't seem to like this because nobody likes Marcus. It's actually because they don't want to get the whole like funding for their program shut down and they want to keep this experiment going, and if like a war starts, the government's not going to be too happy about that, you know? But then Triss and Tobias get a little time to talk and it's actually a productive conversation, and she's going over how she didn't actually need to forgive him because there was nothing to forgive him for, even though he blew up a wall or was part of the plan to blow up the wall that Uriah was standing right in front of and helped people kill a bunch of people when it was a horrible plan and he didn't listen to her, but I guess she doesn't need to forgive him for that. Okay. And somehow they both still agree that they're a good, happy couple and they're good for each other. Guys, all you've done is fight. That's literally all you've done. And this brings me to my point, is that the one thing the movies got right is at least their relationship isn't dumb in the movies. At least it makes sense. And you actually like Tobias, but in the books I hate Tobias. I don't like him at all. But let's move on to Triss's first council meeting where she's sitting in on, and they start going over the crisis in Chicago. And it turns out Evelyn over here has found stores of the death serum. So that's great because not even Divergence can resist that. So yeah, if the Allegiant attack them, there's a chance she just releases the death serum and kills all of the Allegiant. And like we went over, this would just show the rest of the government that this project isn't useful anymore. So they would just shut down the experiment, and David really doesn't want that. So he officially decides that they will be using the memory serum to do a mass reset, resetting everybody's memories in Chicago and implanting fake memories to them. While they're at it, they're thinking maybe we should just do this to the rest of the experiments around the United States or around the world. I don't know how many there are, I'm gonna be so honest, but they decide to just mass reset every single experiment within the next 48 hours. She starts having this horrible realization that to them, the people in the experiments are just genetics, nothing more. They don't care that they had lives, family, friends, anything like that. No. They're doing a mass reset now. She, of course, runs to her group of people, tells them all about this because they need a new plan stat. And as they're all talking, one of them had figured out that the memory serum that the Bureau has can act like a virus now, so it can spread from person to person to person. So it's not like they need to inject a bunch of it into the city. They just need to slowly give it to some people, and it'll get to everybody there. And then you start thinking, wait, what if we just close off a section here and give it to some of the higher ups here and reset their memories? Basically being able to reprogram how they think so they don't think of GDs as lower than GPs and as less than human, basically. Tobias is like, I don't know if we should mess with their memories and stuff, and Triss explains that they're just lucky she's not gonna kill them right now. And after they all talk for a little longer, Matthew and Triss decide that they need to go talk to Nita to figure out where she went wrong so they don't make the same mistakes. But before they can go do that, Christina comes running out and tells them that the doctors are planning to unplug Uriah from life support. And the doctors at this point know that Uriah's never going to wake up. The only thing keeping him alive right now are machines. Meaning that his family back in the city would never get the chance to say goodbye to him. Even though, yeah, he's not really fully there at this point, but this would at least give his family some peace if they could just keep him alive any longer. So Triss has to go over the fact that there's going to be a mass reset in the city pretty soon because Christina wasn't there for any of that. And this would mean that Uriah's family would completely forget about him and never ever get to remember that he existed if they were reset. Christina starts panicking because her family is also in there. Luckily for them, there's so many different serums in this book. There's this fun serum, there's hair in my mouth. There's this fun serum that they can inject themselves with and other people with that makes them immune to the memory serum so they won't lose their memories. So they come up with this plan to send a small group into the city, while another group over here tries to stop the memory serum from ever being released in the city, but the small group in the city will go in there, find the people they care about, and inject them with the serum that stops the memory serum from working. Our little crew going into the city will be Christina, Tobias, and Peter. Now, was he originally supposed to go? Not really, but he wants to come. Amar's gonna be the one driving them into the city, but Amar doesn't really know that. They're just gonna come up with some other excuse for him. The rest of our game is basically just planning to stay back here to come up with a plan to, release the memory serum in this department so they can't release the memory serum in the city. There's a lot of stuff going on. And our people going into the city are also obviously injecting themselves with the memory serum blocker thingy. Man, this sounds insane when I'm explaining it out loud. Anyways, Triss is finally going off to go meet with Nita. Nita over here gives us some handy information that David is the only person in the compound that knows the passcode into that room. They cannot get that information from anybody else. And she does confirm what David already said about there being a death serum that's released if you just try to break into that room without the passcode. She isn't fully cooperating with them though, because right now they kind of have this plan to send somebody in with explosions enough to blow open that door in some sort of hazmat suit so they could live long enough to release the memory serum. It would still be a mission where the person that went in knows they are going to die, because they feel like sacrificing one person is risk saving millions of lives. Yes, the people would still be alive in the city, but they wouldn't be themselves anymore, so does that really count? It's a really interesting thing to think about. Like, does erasing somebody's memory kind of kill them in a way? And I think in this case, because it would be a complete memory wipe, absolutely. And if you're wondering where they're getting the explosions from, they're from Reggie. He knows how to work them and also has them for some reason. And they get Nita to fully cooperate with them and give them a little more information, because if they get this completed, she won't have to go to prison for the rest of her life. Okay, now over to Tobias' point of view. He's talking to Amar, and he gets Amar on board with driving them towards the city. Now, again, Amar does not know the plan. He doesn't really view GDs as equals, so he's like, okay, cool, yeah, let's go. So now our little group going into the city with Amar has to come up with a plan to get separated from Amar, and they come up with the brilliant plan of slashing the tires by accident. So basically Christina's gonna be like, I gotta go to the bathroom, and then they're gonna break the tires, and then they're gonna run away to another truck and go to the city without Amar. And then once they're in the city, the plan is to give one of his parents the memory serum, because basically both sides of this war are led by one parent or another. And they figure if the plan fails in the Bureau, if they can stop the war from happening, they won't have to erase everybody's memory in the city. So he's basically just planning to wipe one of their memories and get them to cooperate with him that way. He has no clue who he plans on giving the memory serum to though, because of course he could erase his abusive father and make a loving father out of him, or he can also erase his mom, who's turned into a completely different person. This part of the plan is all happening in a meeting with everybody else who is in on this plan already, and then Triss has to go up and be like, so we need somebody who's willing to sacrifice himself for the good of humanity. And nobody like volunteers, but everybody kind of looks at Caleb, who's in the room, who tried to kill Triss, and he's like, I mean, I don't really wanna, but I feel like I deserve it. So he agrees to be the sacrifice. After this meeting, Triss is thinking about how a couple weeks ago, she would have been the one to volunteer to sacrifice herself. but it would have been out of guilt, and now she's wondering if Caleb is just doing that same thing. But truly, she doesn't want to die anymore. She knows she can't sacrifice herself. She has more to offer to them. She's talking to Tobias about all of this, and he's like, yeah, it may partially be because of guilt, but it's coming from a place of love because he betrayed you and he feels awful for doing that to somebody he cares about. And then this whole thing snowballs into them making out and then doing a lot more than making out, if you know what I mean. Because they're about to be separated for 2 very dangerous missions, so they don't know if they'll ever see each other again. But like, that won't happen. So anyways, after that, you know, they go and train her brother on how to shoot a gun, so he's not just useless trying to get into the room and doesn't just die before he can actually do what they need him to do. After another council meeting for her, Tobias and her say goodbye, and Tobias is feeling so guilty that he can't be with her tonight because tomorrow is going to be very eventful and very dangerous for the both of them. They both say I love you, and he says I'll see you soon. So he's driving into the city now, still no clue which parent's memory he's going to erase. Of course, again, he would like to erase Marcus's, but he doesn't know which one is going to actually put a stop to the war when he erases their memories. Then they play out the whole plan with Christina getting out, slashing the tires so they can't go on with that truck. Tobias finds another truck. Peter wasn't originally supposed to come along with them, but now he is because he wants to go in the city, and it's pretty clear that he kind of wants to forget. He wants to be part of this memory serum. He's already kind of hinting at that. He doesn't like himself. He doesn't like all the stuff he's done, but we'll get into that a little more later. Now cut back over to Tris. Her and Caleb are having basically this like last deep conversation with each other. It's kind of their goodbye conversation. Even though they'll be going into this together, he's not coming out of it. They're playing a game they used to play all the time when they were little called Candor, which is basically just giving each other the full honest truth about the situation or how they're feeling about something. It's confirmed during this that the biggest reason he's doing all of this is because of guilt for the things he's done. But before we can really get into that, the Bureau announces an emergency lockdown. Meaning they have to start their plan right now. They don't know for sure if this means somebody figured it out or if something else is just happening coincidentally right now, but their time slot is closing fast. So they start preparing Caleb to go into this room with the death serum to die, and Tris is just thinking about what abnegation used to say. Basically, they believe you should only let somebody sacrifice themselves for you if it's the ultimate way for them to show you love. And she knows that's not the reason Caleb is doing this. He's doing this out of guilt. Yes, kind of out of that love, like Tobias is saying, but it's not just out of love to show her that he cares about her. It's more guilt than anything. This is where we all start to see where this is going and why we needed 2 POVs. Anyways, back over to Tobias and Peter. They're in the city now, and Tobias and Peter are split up from Christina, who is finding the other people that they want to inject with the memory serum, shield thingy serum, extra cool serum that shields from the memory serum. But Tobias and Peter are together, and then Peter starts a fight because he just wants to get the memory serum from Tobias so he can forget about his whole being as of now. He hates the person he is. He hates himself so deeply, he wants to forget everybody he's ever known or loved to be a different person. Tobias ultimately wins this because he's Tobias, and he makes a promise to Peter, though, that he will give him some of the memory serum after he deals with his parents. Now back over to the Bureau. Caleb and Tris are heading to the lab. Caleb still has everything he will need to go into the lab with him currently. But as they are having to run away from guards who are telling them to stop yelling at them, to stop running from them towards the lab, she just sees the scared little boy she knew growing up and not the man who gave her over to Janine Matthews, and just tells him to give her the backpack. Because she, at least, has a slight chance of surviving the death serum. Most GPs can't fight against the truth serum, but she can, so maybe she can also survive this death serum. So she gets a backpack from him, then aims a gun at him, telling the others who are following them that he is her hostage. And if they shoot at her, she will kill him. They round a corner, get away from these guards, they say a quick I love you to each other, and she tells him to tell Tobias that she didn't want to leave him if something goes wrong. And then she takes off down the hall, shooting guards on her way, getting to the door with the explosive in hand. She gets to the door, she puts the bomb there, the bomb goes off, the door opens, the serum comes out, there are guards at the end of the hall still shooting at her. One catches her in the arm, but it's not deadly, and she stumbles into the room. Once she's slightly in the room, she can really hear the spray of the serum now, she can see the serum bottles, but she didn't have any time to actually put on the special suit they made for this situation, so she would have more time, so she's having to rush through this room right now. But she's confident that she's gonna make it out of this serum. She's sure she can fight this off. And now that we're all really engaged in this story, back over to Tobias. He is currently in the factionless headquarters on his way to talk to Evelyn. He basically just walks right into the building, plays the My Name is Tobias Eden card, and he's taken right to her. He explains to her what's actually going on, that the people outside the city want to just send a memory serum into the city because of the war that's about to happen between them. And then pulls out the memory serum vial, putting it in the middle of the table, explaining that he came here to make her drink this. And explains that he knows Marcus and Johanna are coming to attack and knows that she plans to use the death serum on them. She confirms he's right, but truly thinks the factions are evil and this is their only chance to stop them. He has to explain to her, she's doing the same thing the factions are doing. She's giving people the illusion of choice. She asks him why he didn't tell her this sooner, and he has to explain he was scared of her. And she was starting to remind him of Marcus. She is so offended by this, obviously. But he just explains to her that Marcus was a tyrant in the house, but she has become a tyrant to the entire city. And then explains he came here to give her a choice instead of the memory serum. And explains that she can fight with the factionless and start this war and maybe make everybody in the city lose their memory, or she can choose to have her son back and put this all aside. And then, just like that, she pulls him into the tightest hug a boy could ask for from his mom, telling him that he can let them have everything in this city. I love this scene so much, it's so cute. It's like the sweetest scene in the entire city. She's like, I don't care, I just want my boy. I know, I don't even like either of their characters that much, but this scene, okay, she was just a confused lady, he's just an idiot. And they're making it all right here and okay, it's fine, let's continue on. Everybody get your emotions in check, we have to go back over to Triss, who is currently inhaling death serum. And as we speak, she is crumbling to her knees. She is not doing well. She's starting to feel like she's drifting off to another place. It's really not looking good for our girl right now. But then remembers that her parents died for her so she could help everybody else and pushes through this cloud. And finally gets out of this little chamber and gets to the door where David's office actually is and goes in. Only to be greeted by David himself. Now he's pretty shocked to see her, honestly, and is thinking she just found some way to make herself immune to the death serum. He doesn't know how she made it through. But no, Triss is just such a badass. Death serum can't even kill our girl. Look at her go, we're so proud. But then she does remember during the whole debacle of like crumbling to the floor, death serum, all that, she dropped her gun, so she doesn't have a weapon, but David does. I forgot to mention, he's aiming a gun at her currently, of course. And, you know, the door's open, but David has death serum resistance, even though we were told that doesn't exist. But remember, kids, the government lies. He's thinking there's no way for her to get to the memory serum, release that, while she's held at gunpoint, and basically tells her that no matter what, she's gonna die in here. He's going to shoot her. So she comes up with a brilliant plan of stall, distract, and then jump towards it, put in the code, and release the memory serum. So she brings up the fact that she knows that he is responsible for her parents' death. He explains that actually he's not though, because he warned Natalie before everything went down and gave her time to get out of there, but she chose not to. And hearing how he's talking about her mom, she finally asks the question, did you love her? Now to all of us reading the book, the answer is obviously, yes, he did. And honestly, I'm pretty sure the password to this room had something to do with her name or was just her name because he said the name and then pointed at her, Natalie's daughter, who probably looked like her. But no, nobody thought of that and we never get confirmation on this, but that's my theory and I'm gonna die on that hill. She starts to hear footsteps now of guards running down the hallways towards them and she just thinks good because she needs this serum to be exposed to even more people so it can spread. And goes on this whole little monologue about how her mother understood what sacrifice was, and if it meant giving up somebody else's life, it was just evil. Sacrifice should be done out of love, not disgust for somebody's genetics, and not before you exhaust every single other option. And because they don't understand that, and they're willing to sacrifice all the people in all those cities and all their memories their entire lives, she has to get rid of them. And explains that she didn't come here to steal anything and lunges towards the device that holds the memory serum ready to release it. She quickly taps in the numbers, locking the machine, hears a gun go off, feels it hit her, but presses the green button, releasing the memory serum. And then she slumps to the floor in so much pain, but her body is also going numb. She hears the beep and the turning sound and looks over to see David's body slumped in a chair, showing that the memory serum is starting to take effect already. And remember, it spreads like a virus. It's going to get to the rest of them. And she's just on the floor with warm blood on her neck. From behind David, she sees her mother wearing the same clothes she was wearing when she died. Her mom comes over, leans next to her, saying, "Hello, Beatrice," and Beatrice just asks, "Am I done yet?" And her mom says, "Yes, my dear child, you are done." And when she asks about her friends, her mom just tells her that they're gonna care for each other because that's what people do. And Triss is pulled into the afterlife by her mother. I hate this book. No, I'm not gonna be able to erase that. It's not a fake out, I swear. If you think it's a fake out, it's not. If you just watch the movies and you're like, but she didn't die in the movie, yeah, because they made the right choice. They made the right choice. Also, frick, just to make it hurt more, rip to Uriah too, because he's gonna die in like 2 seconds, okay? We already knew that. But let me just rub salt in the wound. You know who's not dead though? David. We just erased his memories. So now we have to continue reading this book when the main character we've been following for 2.5 books is freaking dead and we're stuck with her loser boyfriend. Everything ends up working out in the city. Peter ends up taking the memory serum. He forgets about his old self and he's gonna become a better person now, surely. Mind you, Tobias doesn't know that Triss is freaking dead because he's in the city and they don't got walkie-talkies or anything. Now, Marcus did try to cause a whole scene in the city, but Johanna was like, no, I'm done with this, and basically stripped him from leadership. Again, Tobias still doesn't know Triss is dead, so he's in the city and goes over to Uriah's mom and Zeke to kind of explain what happened with Uriah. And explain they can come with them so they can say goodbye to Uriah, but he's never waking up again. And then they make it back to the compound, and it's clear they succeeded. They already kind of knew that, though, because the memory serum didn't go off in the city. But everything starts to go wrong for Tobias when Kara comes over and he asks, where's Triss? And she just says, I'm so sorry, Tobias. And they explain to him that Triss went into the weapons lab instead of Caleb because she didn't think he was sacrificing himself for the right reasons, survived the frickin' death serum, and was killed by a frickin' bullet. A bullet! No, she didn't die to death serum, it was the bullet to the neck that did it. Our girl can survive all these serums but one frickin' bullet? You mean a bullet just takes her out at the end? Oh yeah, and she didn't survive. They do let him know that. She didn't frickin' survive the bullet to the neck. His hearing starts to fade out. Christina just figured out her best friend is dead because, mind you, she was also in the city, so she starts to scream a lot, and everybody is just now mourning the loss of Triss. The next few days are going by in a blur of grief for him, but everybody else is working on getting the memories back and the people that they erased the memories from, and also lobbying with the government now for equality for GDs. And then we get a little moment where Caleb comes over to Tobias to tell him the final words that Triss told him to say to Tobias of she didn't want to leave him. And this conversation doesn't really go that well because obviously he's kind of blaming Caleb for Triss's death because he should be the one that's dead right now, not Triss. And also Caleb is her sibling, so slightly reminds him of Triss, but has none of the parts that he truly loved about her. And then the very next scene is them unplugging Uriah, okay? I think I'm more upset about Uriah's death. And still am. I freaking love this character. This is a worse ending than freaking Mockingjay because at least I understand that. I understand that. I don't understand this. It's just moving on. We're moving on from this. So, David is still in charge even though his memory was wiped, but he's still in charge apparently. In charge. He's in charge. I'm losing it over here. I'm losing it. Tobias does try to go off and kill David because, you know, David did kind of kill Triss, but he doesn't remember that anymore, so can they really blame him? No. But Tobias does try to go off and kill him, but they stop him from doing that, even though I think they should have just let him. I think they should have. But, you know, killing somebody in a high state of government official thingy was probably not a good idea, but like, I don't care. Then in the next scene, Tobias has the memory serum, and he's about to go take this to forget about Triss completely, which that's the worst idea he's ever had, but he just wants to make the pain stop. He's been grieving her nonstop. The pain won't leave him. Christina is the one that finds him and puts a stop to this because she's like, no, Triss doesn't deserve that. She deserves to at least be remembered. And they have this nice little heartfelt moment and it's all great and dandy, but she's still dead. She's dead. And then we get to the epilogue. Tobias is now living in the city. He's living in the city as well as basically everybody else. Him and Christina are really good friends now. They're not in a relationship yet. If you know, you know. And when we catch up to them, it's the day where they're finally going to be spreading Triss's ashes. Triss's ashes. The world isn't perfect by the end of this book. Some people still think they still need to have a full-blown rebellion for GDs, but the government is starting to give them more and more equality with most aspects of life now and treating them as normal functioning humans that they are. And then the very ending of this book is basically just watching Tobias move past his grief. I feel like this lighting gives interrogation vibes, but if you're wondering what happened, I filmed the very last couple minutes of this video and my microphone just didn't pick up the audio. So let's finish this book out. And I ended it with basically just saying, moving on with his life and that. He's moving past all his grief. All the characters are kind of depressed and happy at the same time. Like the world's better, but they all lost a bunch of people and had to go through all that as teenagers. But at least there's no factions in the city anymore and things are looking on the up and up. And that's basically it. That's literally all my microphone missed besides my rant and outro to this, okay? Because I don't like this series. I like the first book, and then the other two books just go, pow! They're not good. They're not good, and I'm gonna stand on that firmly, on my opinion that these books are not that good. And I know she's writing a new dystopian series, and I'll be interested to see, because she had such potential with Divergent, and it all just fizzled out so fast during Insurgent. So maybe her new series that she's coming out with will be better. Hopefully, I hope so. Rebecca, whatever your name is, I don't even know. I hope the next one's better. Hope to see you there. But anyways, yeah, just don't forget Tris is dead. That's super fun. I'm gonna go. I actually still need to film the intro for this, so I'm gonna go do that. So if you saw the intro, just know I filmed this right after this. And thank y'all so much for watching, all the support. I really appreciate it so much. Leave other book recap recommendations in the comments below. Know that Maze Runner may or may not happen at some point. I know we hit the like goal. I just cannot force myself to sit down and read those books. I really didn't like the first one. So we're maybe gonna get to that one day. I'm not saying it's never gonna happen, but I don't know. But anyways, on that happy note, again, thank y'all so much for your support. I really appreciate all of it. And I will see y'all in the next video. But I haven't decided what that's gonna be yet, so I should figure that out. Okay, bye y'all!